There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody, it's Wednesday.
Yep.
Time once again for our live stream show.
Yep. Gonna do Navajo Code Talkers, which that's what's won the poll on the Patreon.
Yeah, I think somebody recommended it a couple weeks ago. I don't remember what the topic of the show was, but somebody recommended it. I said, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. I called the show like Native American Code Talkers because even though like the Navajo ones are like the best known, they actually did have some other tribes that also participated in it and used their native languages as well. But it wasn't quite as widespread, I think, or as well known. But I kind of wanted to, branch out and like mention that as well. Even though, like I said, the Navajo Code Talkers probably the best known ones.
Looks like people are starting to show up. Tammy just jumped into the comment section. We'll be starting the show here in a minute.
Hey everybody, what's going on?
Yeah. So it is a Wednesday.
Yes, it is.
And I took the bike and went down to the printers and got all the designs for the new shirts. They look good. I got a Canon Films. I got an OCP, Omni Consumer Products from RoboCop. Got one of those. Got what was it? How do you say it? Corcolio?
Corelco?
Corelco.
Or however
Corelco Studios. Got one of those. What else did we have?
Omega Man.
And Omega Man. The Omega Man looks really good. It's just the font from the movie. It looks real good. Kind of that demonic looking font. And I got each one of them. I got a small one and I got a fucking big size one for different kinds of shirts. So if you guys want a big shirt, I got stuff for big, like extra large. Got stuff for that. Or I like the smaller ones on mediums and fucking smalls, and even large. Actually, I think the medium size or the smaller logo looks better on them. But it just depends on whatever you want. So I'm going to get some of those framed up in the next couple days, and I'll get some mediums fucking shot. I'll wear them on the show to fucking promo them. And I know there's already a couple people that want the OCP ones. I'm gonna send some to shit, I'm fucking drawing a blank on his name. I'm not drunk yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're not even drunk. Although you probably had some beers at the bar, right? But that was a while ago.
No, yeah, it was Murder Hornets for him.
Oh, that's another thing too, is that the movie retrospective this week, I had to do it by myself because you were at the bar and you didn't come back.
You'd be all right.
So I was like, I didn't know when you told me you weren't, because I thought you were
only there for an hour.
I thought you were just going to the print shop and then kind of come right back and we could record the review. But then you said you were at the bar and I was like, well, shit, maybe he's probably going to be gone all afternoon.
No,
so
I was only gone there for an hour.
So, well, I didn't know that, so I just like recorded it myself.
Okay.
Because it had to be edited and gone up. So the movie retrospective is just me.
That's good.
But Tom watched the movie too, but he didn't like it. I didn't like it either, but
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to say about that one either.
It would have been funny, like, for you to be on it, but because it was bad. But
I'm sure you covered it. That was.
I did.
Like some shit straight out. That was like a bad episode of Star Trek.
It was. I think.
It looked just like Star Trek. Did you find out where that studio was?
I did not. I'm pretty sure, and I think I said that on the thing. I was like, I thought the movie was shot in the Philippines.
Okay.
So I'm guessing. I mean, obviously the exteriors were, but the interiors, I have no idea where that is.
Yeah.
It definitely looked like some Star Trek.
Probably some love motel over in the Philippines.
Or Planet of the Apes or something.
Planet
It looked like that. Tammy said, I might be in and out of the chat tonight. Puppy stepped on a bee just a few minutes ago. Oh no!
Yeah.
Well, hopefully the puppy's gonna be okay. Oh my goodness, stepping on a bee.
Camp guy's got it messed up. He says, I bet those Nazis were stumped when they first heard the code talking. That was the Japanese. They were fighting the Japanese. We weren't fighting the Germans.
Well,
they may have sent some. I don't think so, though. I remember.
The weird thing about it is that, the Germans actually, because I want to get into that a little bit too. I know, like, the Navajo Code Talkers, that's mainly a World War II thing, but they did kind of utilize it a little bit in World War I. And the Germans actually knew about that. So we'll kind of get into that from World War One.
Okay.
So we'll get into that. But the interesting thing about it, I was watching this documentary about it, and apparently during some of the battles where the Navajo code talkers were employed, some of the people like at the place where they were going like didn't know that they had Navajo code talkers. So it's like Japanese. So they thought it was Japanese because they're like, what the fuck did the Japanese like infiltrate like our radio signals? Right. Because nobody told them that they had like this, that they had the code talkers there. So yeah, there was just like a lack of communication like on the part. Because I mean, there weren't, I think at max there were like 300 of them, I think, like during World War II, I believe. That's Navajo. There were some other ones too, but like I said, that's the whole procedure. Like it didn't start in World War II. They had some in World War I. It just wasn't as widespread. But the Germans knew about it from World War I. That's why they tried to like circumvent it. But
the ones that got famous were mostly Marine Corps code talkers, and they were fighting in the Pacific against the Japanese. And they had some hardcore orders. They fully understood. A code talker fully understood that he could not be captured. So you couldn't let a code talker fall into enemy hands. So that meant if you had to kill a code talker. You couldn't let the enemy have him.
I mean that was
too important. They agreed to that.
They did actually. Like I saw. I think sadly all of the original code talkers I think are dead. I think like the last one died in 2020 or 2021. But one of them said, we had this thing. It's like it didn't come out until later. Yeah. But they always were in pairs, and they said, if we both got captured, like you were supposed to like shoot each other. You were supposed to shoot each other.
Yeah. Which you can do it. Those guys at fucking Columbine did it. You just count down. Pow pow. That way you don't have to pull the trigger on yourself. It's a lot psychologically a lot
because
easier.
Really that's the only way that the code would have been broken is if they had captured and tortured one of the code talkers and got them. There was absolutely no other way to break it. Right. So, and they never did. Spoiler alert. That it's the only.
The language is too irregular, and it was had too much fucking slang in it, and it was tribal slang, and a lot of it they knew how to hint to each other using that language. So they didn't actually kind of have to say what they were talking about.
It wasn't that. That's not why it worked.
Okay, well, that's what I was told.
Yeah, that's not why it worked.
It was hard to crack, and they were also, from what I understand, and sometimes that the Indians knew each other, so they could do stuff over the radio that only two Indians that actually knew each other could get away with doing. That's what I remember hearing.
Yeah, the reason it worked. Well, there were several reasons.
We're gonna already get into the show.
Which no, I'm just saying. Because you were talking about it. There were several reasons. One of the reasons being probably the most important reason being that one, like hardly anybody spoke it other than Navajo, and maybe less than 30 white people, like non-Navajo people, knew how to speak it. So almost nobody. Yeah. And it wasn't just that, because it wasn't just a case of, we're going to just translate an English message into Navajo. They also put another layer of coding on it, so that even if a Navajo speaker heard it,
they wouldn't know what it was.
If they weren't one of the code talkers, they still wouldn't know it. It'd just sound like gibberish. So it wasn't just them talking in their native language.
Okay, well then what I was told was true. That's basically the same thing.
Well, it didn't have anything to do with them being friends or anything like that, because they did like train the people, but they had like this. Actually, if you go on the Marines website or the Navy website, they have the dictionary now because it's all been declassified, obviously, and they have like all of the terms that they had in there and how they encoded the alphabet and how they did all that kind of stuff. So it's actually like really interesting. So we'll kind of.
So I remember one of them saying that they didn't have to use the code that much. They did use it for certain things, real important stuff, but on daily stuff, they could just use their normal language and just use a bunch of hinting and a bunch of shit that only two dudes would know what it was. They're like, hey, you got the thing? Yeah, the thing is here.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll be there at the place.
I mean, they only used
just did
it
shit like that.
They only used it if it was like important. Like, hey, we're gonna do like a sneak attack on XYZ, and the troop deployment's gonna be here, and they didn't want the enemy picking that up, obviously. Right. So they would use it for that, but they wouldn't use it for just like everyday shit, obviously. Right. But yeah, it's again like a really I didn't know that much about it, but like the more I researched about it, it's like really really cool. And I love like stuff about codes and shit anyway. So
some of them were platoon level fucking RTOs though.
Yeah.
From what I remember, I was a RTO for one of the platoons I was in for a while, and I was also an RTO in the first 327 Recon. And it's a fucking radio operator. Got to carry it on your back. Your weapon's M16.
yeah.
And it's fucking, in those days, it was a PRC 177 with the fucking sluggers and Singars on top of it. And not sluggers, what was that thing called? Fuck. It was their scrambler we had to put on there. It was a piece of shit. Heavy. It's only like a fucking 1 watt radio. Those little Baofangs are 5 watts. You could carry those around. But it was just a bulletproof fucking radio. And I think the World War II one wasn't that much more sophisticated than ours. About the same. When I was carrying it was more like Vietnam, 1980s era. Like something out of dumb Aliens. It's like a fucking big metal box with handles on it. Fucking knobs. And real primitive. It worked though. And it could work fucking in all conditions, freezing cold, fucking hot. Huge batteries on the bottom of it. Pouring rain. You could fucking have it in your ruck and go through the water and come out and it'd work.
Grifter says, always amazed at how Native Americans were true patriots despite the history of Manifest Destiny, a true warrior culture. Yeah, I wanted to get a little bit into that. Like, not a huge amount, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, in particular, like, the Navajo and their kind of contentious dealings with the U.S. government, like, after the Civil War. And, but the fact that they... Not just the fact they're, like, yes, a warrior culture, but they're very, like, protective of their own lands and stuff like that. So a lot of them, particularly when the Code Talker program came along, they really, like, volunteered. And some of them, like, even lied about their age. They said they got some of them in there were, like, as young as 15 years old, like, lying, saying that because they really wanted to... I mean, most of them joined after the Pearl Harbor attack.
During the time I was in, I don't know what the statistics are now, but when it came to Army, in the infantry... if you were to look at ethnic demographics, Native Americans were highly overrepresented. Highly. In other words, they had the highest incident of volunteer service going into combat arms, and they all wanted infantry. They all want to be paratroopers or rangers, and because that's in their culture. It's a macho culture, and the greatest part of a young man's life is to either be a hunter or a warrior, and this goes back generations. People don't understand it. If you go back to the 1800s, and you can fucking look this up and just look at photographs, out in the plains, the biggest part of the U.S. cavalry were all Lakota, just Lakota upon Lakota, whole units of them, Lakota in American uniforms, with like one white officer every now and then. They're just more and more Lakota. And it's because when the Union started to expand into their territory, technology came before the Union did. So lifestyles were changing because there were trains and people started owning land and putting up damn fences, and they had cattle. So technology expanded faster than the United States did. So the world had already kind of changed, and Indians or Native Americans were adopted technology as it came. They weren't anti-technological. Matter of fact, most of the time they had money and they had the best equipment they could afford, and a lot of times it was better than what the U.S. Army had. When they fought the U.S. Army, they were using lever-action repeaters in a time when the U.S. Army was using single-shot falling block rifles, which were a lot slower. So the Army didn't really get the good shit. Civilians had the good shit, and then the Indians were civilians. Well, as the Union started to expand their territory, a lot of their lifestyle was already gone. And they were kind of given a deal that kind of was Xerxes out of fucking 300, join my ranks and you will carry your banner far through Europa, that kind of shit, So joining the U.S. Army was just another way of becoming well-equipped and well-organized and trained to defend their own territory, because they worked in their own territory.
Yeah.
So it just became, they were U.S. Army, but they were defending their own territory in that uniform, in that legal structure.
Okay.
And they were also all the cops. If you go to Southwest, New Mexico, Utah, Texas, all these places, there have been Native American law enforcement and soldiers there going back centuries. Centuries. This isn't new. It's just that these fucking educational galaxy brains up in Boston and shit had no idea of the culture down here. They don't know. They're looking at it through the prisms of their ideologies. Here's an example. One fucking Sergeant Zamora was my squad leader when I was in Korea, over at Camp Greaves up near the DMZ. His dad was Lonnie Zamora, the dude who saw the UFO down in New Mexico. That was his dad.
We still need to do a show about
Still got
that.
to show. Do a
It's
show
written
about
down. I put it in the poll a
Yeah.
couple times, but it didn't
Yeah,
work.
that was his name was his son was Lonnie Zamora Jr., who was my squad leader. He was a big old Native American dude. He was twice the size of his dad. His dad is like a little short dude, but you'll see Zamora. I think it's Lonnie Zamora. Just look up what was the name of that New Mexico UFO.
Yeah, or you can just
Yeah.
look up his name, because I think I called
Yeah.
it the Lonnie Zamora UFO
Yeah.
incident, because it's pretty famous, like in UFO circles.
Yeah, I was at the guard post. I was at guard post Collier, laying on the ground on a fucking sleeping bag on a fucking rolled out pussy pad, which is a mat we used to sleep on. Getting ready for a night shift. Down there smoking cigarettes, smoking with another guy, and we were hearing Sergeant Zamora tell that story, and he's telling the story like his dad was famous, and I'd never heard of it before. And then later, I found out that damn, that is a famous case, and there were some details that his dad couldn't let out, but Sergeant Zamora said that his dad didn't think it was extraterrestrial. There was a symbol on it that he saw it, and the fucking intelligence guys there, was part of the FBI, says don't talk about that. There was a signal. There was a symbol he drew on it, and I think what it was one of those fucking range finding things that you could put a telescope on to figure out how far away it was and how fast it was moving. So, which I think was some kind of test craft. I think it was something like a test craft for some kind of lunar lander. That's what I think it was. Something that had a rocket on the bottom of it, could take off vertically and land.
Stardog 78 said, one of the flag raisers on Iwo Jima was Native American. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Ira Hayes, he was a Marine paratrooper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, many historians, as well as some like commanders and stuff like that were there, have said that if it wasn't for the Navajo code talkers, we would not have taken Iwo Jima. The U.S. would not have taken it, because they were like so important in relaying particular information. So a lot of them were there. If you see like interviews with the ones that were, my stupid phone's ringing, sorry, was some of the ones that were surviving. Like I said, they've all passed away now. But the documentary I saw was from a couple years ago, so they still like interviewed like a few of them that were still alive at the time, and several of them they talked to were on Iwo Jima, and we're talking about like how fucking horrifying it was. But I mean, that's kind of the thing. He was talking about how the Japanese had it all, because I think you brought this up before, had it all like undercut with tunnels and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's totally undermined.
So the one, and he's like, and we were kind of on high ground, like shooting them, so it's like they could see us, but we couldn't see them. Like the one guy said, I don't think I saw a single Japanese soldier. Like he's like, I saw them like shooting at us and stuff like that, but he's like, I never saw one of them because they were underground all the time.
They shoot through holes.
Yeah.
The whole thing was undermined.
Yeah.
Because there was no defense. They knew about naval bombardment, and they knew that the Navy would show up and just bombard the fucking place. They didn't even really resist landing. They said it was a waste of men. They just let us on, and they wanted to get us down in those tunnels. Most of those Japanese guys died not from gunfire, not even from flamethrowers. They died because we buried them. Buried them alive.
And the whole thing about that was, I think, what was it, 200,000 Japanese troops they sent on there? And they basically said, you just go on there and, like, wipe everybody out. They told the Japanese, or don't come back, essentially.
Yeah, you couldn't take them prisoner. What were you going to do with them?
Right.
Put them on the ship?
Yeah.
You had to continue forward. You couldn't put them on the ship. So that was the bad thing about island fighting, is that it's to the death. You can't take prisoners. Luckily, they didn't surrender, though. Because, then you have to kill a prisoner that had surrendered.
Yeah.
Because there was no way out. Neither side could take prisoners. Because the Japanese couldn't take you prisoner. What were they going to do with you? They weren't even getting food. They couldn't get off the island. They were already kind of starving. But, no, they mostly died with Sherman tanks with bulldozer blades on the front of them and explosive charges collapsing the fronts of the tunnels. They just buried them. And they never came out. I mean, they shot a lot of them up, but
Yeah, I was
Those
watching
from
some.
Very
Like
Live.
I said, some of the documentaries I saw had like lots of footage from that, and it's like,
Yeah.
man, fucking dead bodies everywhere. It's
Yeah.
like, it's pretty
The
horrifying.
worst one was Peleliu. That was the worst one.
Yeah, I was just talking about Iwo Jima in particular because that
Yeah.
was one where like the code talkers were.
Peleliu was the one they all went crazy, and they were taking heads and putting heads around their fighting positions and sticking heads on the front of fucking tanks and some guys would be fighting trapped in between fucking snipers positions, and there, the Japanese shooting at them, and they'd be behind a pile of rocks with 3 or 4 rotten Japanese heads up on there because they couldn't move out of there, and they would just, as they would kill people, they'd start. Both sides were just fighting to the death. They found what really kicked that one off is like on day 2 or 3, one of the U.S. units found an American guy that had been tied to a stake and had his dick cut off and fucking tortured to death. And they saw that, and that was it. They fucking that started the insanity. But it was taking heads. That was the thing for Peleliu. And then once that shit was over, they pretended like it didn't happen. And there was really no reason for Peleliu. They could have went around the island. Because those guys weren't getting fed anyway. They would have starved out in a few weeks, few months anyway. There was no way they could get off that island. Because, the Japanese Navy was fucked. But the thinking of the time is, well, there's the enemy, let's go get him.
Yeah.
Can't leave him there. You could have, though. But, yeah, they kind of tried to erase Peleliu. I think that was the one that Ed Wood was on, wasn't it, Peleliu?
Might have been, yeah. Now that you
I can
mention
understand why he was crazy. He was fucking on Peleliu with wearing women's underwear.
it. That's pretty ballsy, you guys. I have to say.
Yeah.
Camp Guy said, I don't know if I would rather be in the European theater or in the Pacific. I think Europe would be easier. Probably. I mean, from everything I know about the whole Pacific theater, World War II, that sounds like a fucking... I mean, it all sounds like a nightmare, but fucking... no thanks.
There were 2 real fucking savage places in that era. The Eastern Front but that was the Germans and the Russians. Man, they just ground each other down to nothing. Real bad. Bad shit happened up there. And civilians were sometimes caught in the middle of them and fucking starving to death in cities. Fucking that's where all that Hannibal Lecter fucking shit was happening. That one was pretty bad. And then the island fighting. Some experts said that fucking the island fighting was probably the most savage warfare in the history of mankind. Might have been the island fighting between U.S. and Japan. And I don't really doubt it. Because a lot of it wasn't recorded. You know what I mean? So much bad shit happened out there. Shit that would have been considered war crimes. There was no witnesses. There was no civilians there. And the Army's not going to rat on itself. It was just going out there annihilating Japanese soldiers. You couldn't take them prisoner. They were fighting to the death anyway. Both sides. It was just you're on an island. There's no way on or off. The Japanese couldn't get on or off. Their navy was fucking all tied up, and they were kind of starving to death by the time we were getting there to them. And it was like I said, you could have gone around a lot of those islands, but. They're out there in their boat. They're out there in those boats with all those troops. Well, let's get them. That's what we're here for.
What else are we gonna do?
Yeah. Well, they weren't shy of men or anything and material. We had a fucking shit ton of dudes and a shit ton of fucking ammunition. So they just fucking attacked every fucking island in sight. Just leapfrogged their way up. Just systematic.
Oracle says, my grandfather served in the Pacific Theater. Mine did as well. And he had nightmares until the end of his life.
Yeah.
I believe it. Camp Guy said, my uncle was in Europe and he didn't talk about it much. Yeah, my grandfather was in the Pacific Theater as well. He died a long time ago, actually. He died in 1991. Yeah. He didn't really talk about it all that much either. He had like a couple photos from it that were on the wall, but with him and his buddies, but he didn't really talk about it either. So I don't know what the fuck he saw, you know what I mean?
The worst place, like I said, you had the Eastern Front, which was a frozen hell.
Yeah.
A frozen hell of insanity, like a damn Slayer video or something. Okay, like a Slayer song. If you went into the Eastern Front, whether you were Russian or German, you were a dead man. Your chances were fucking very slim. The Pacific War, that island hopping stuff. If you were Japanese, you were toast. You had a lot better chance if you were American, but you were still in a fucking super humid, super hot hell, on these little bitty islands. Tropical hell. Not good.
I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is that, I mean, you're on a teeny little island, like in the middle of a massive fucking ocean.
Yeah, nowhere to go.
Yeah, you really don't have anywhere to go.
Nowhere to go.
And it's like, if you get stranded there, you're kind of fucked.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, no thank you. I'm not really a big fan of being stranded out in the middle of the ocean.
And we fucked up the Japanese Navy, so those guys weren't being fed. They were fucking starving to death out there and trying to fight. And it made sense, you know what I mean? They were trying to stop us because they were told that we would make it to the Japanese home island and rape and murder all their women. They believed it. Because that's what they did to the Chinese women down in Nanjing.
Yeah, I mean, so that's probably
exactly what they
not... They probably weren't exaggerating. I mean,
Dudes
because
were
it had happened before.
Yeah. GIs would go through the knapsacks and the personal possessions of the dead Japanese, and they'd find basically snuff photos that they took in Nanking, and the guys were like, what the fuck is going on? They didn't know where those photos were from. They were just handing them up to Intel. They thought it was Japanese doing that to other Japanese people. They didn't know what they were seeing. Because, they couldn't tell them apart. They looked to be the same race. So they were mystified. Other guys evidently knew that was somewhere in China. But...
Yeah, that shit... and a lot of that shit didn't come out until, much later.
No, they didn't know about it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they know about it now, but they didn't really know about it at the time. It all kind of,
They were like, who are these guys?
Out.
Who are these guys, And there was some kind of gangsters or something. They didn't know what it was.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Zach says, I wonder how many serial killers there would have been in the 70s and 80s if those guys hadn't grown up with abusive dads from war-related PTSD. I'm sure that probably contributed, you know what I mean? I'm sure it's not the only thing, I'm sure. But a lot of them did have dads of that generation, and a lot of their dads were abusive or drunk or neglectful or something. So, not all of them, obviously. But, I'm sure that contributed as well.
Without that Pacific Island fighting, there never would have been suburbia as you know it. There never would have been television sitcoms as you know them. There wouldn't have been Bewitched. There wouldn't have been fucking I Dream of Jeannie. There wouldn't have been Father Knows Best. A lot of stuff that white people would still be urban for the most part. All the fucking things that contemporary Americans believe is to be like the standards for American life and the American lifestyle and the American dreams was all product of a fucking federal program to kind of re-civilize these white guys coming back from World War II because they were scared of them.
Well, because they'd seen pretty much the worst shit that you would ever and experience, like some of the worst shit you'd ever want to see. You know what I mean?
They had all these dudes that had survived it, and they were like, what are we going to do with these guys? We can't really bring them back. What are we going to do with them? Well, we got to keep them busy. We got to reward them. So the plan is to get them to work in car factories and factories doing mass production of household appliances. And then to get them out of the cities into the suburbs and make them live civilized lives with a woman taking care of them. Okay, and then let them age out. And that was the parents of the baby boomers, So they came back and had a lot of kids and lived a suburban life, and they made all the Hollywood and television get on board to promote that idealized house, picket fence, and all that kind, with the dog and the cat, and they did that through television, with Father Knows Best and I Dream of Jeannie, and you ever notice I Dream of Jeannie? These are officers back at home in a civilized environment, and they're being normal guys and having fun, you know what I mean, and hot broads and shit like that, you know what I mean. She came out of a bottle. That's all to appeal to veterans.
Yeah, because like I said, they probably didn't want to see any more of that fucking shit when they got back either.
Well, no, I think they wanted to see military guys they could relate to, but they're living a friendly life.
I meant that when they got back, it's like they'd seen the worst of the worst, and it's like, I just want like a normal life, a nice life where I don't have to see that shit anymore.
Exactly.
Which is completely understandable.
Yeah. They'd had enough of that, and they just wanted to kick back and drink and work and
grill some steaks.
They eat some steaks and have a hot wife and pump out a few kids and then die off. That's really what they wanted. They were sick of it, and I think it worked.
Like I said, you can't blame them.
It worked. That's what happened to a lot of them.
Yeah. But the thing about it is that because they had seen the worst of the worst, I think a lot of times, even if they lived like a regular life and worked a regular job the rest of their days and had a wife and kids, it leaked out in other ways. Like I said, a lot of them died early, or they had problems with alcohol.
A lot of them were alcoholics.
Or, they beat their kids or some shit like that. Obviously, it wasn't all of them, but it came out in other ways, I think.
A lot of them were alcoholics.
Yeah.
A lot of them kind of looked down their noses at people that weren't in a war. Like, oh, you got it easy. You know what I mean? So, you'll never know what it's like.
The stupid thing is, I always thought that was so dumb because it's like dudes, they go off, and like I said, dudes that were in World War I or World War II, and they just saw, like, the worst shit ever. Like, nobody should fucking have to see that. And then they get home, and then they're like, okay, well, I don't want to see that anymore. That sucked. It was, like, nightmarish. And then they get home, and they have kids, and their kids have kids, and there's, oh, you kids today, you're so soft, you haven't had it. I'm like, well, good. I mean, I thought that's what you wanted. You don't want your kids to, like, have to go through the same shit.
Well, that's not what would happen, though. What would happen,
I know, but I'm just saying.
What was happening is they were coming back, and they would see people whine and cry over shit that is not a problem. You know what I mean? They were seeing first world problems. So they were like, you guys are fucking pussies. You're crying about that. You know what I mean? You got it made and you're crying. So then they would say, oh, shut up, old man. And then they're being disrespected. So like, oh, fuck you, bitches. So you know what I mean? But then you have some dudes that are just bad. They're going to take it out on a little kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's like a little kid doesn't know. It's like they've never fucking.
Well, that might have helped create some of these fucking weird psychos that came around later.
That's what Zach was saying. I think there's absolutely, like I said, I'm sure there's lots of factors, but I'm sure that was like a big factor.
I think it was a bunch of different factors. One of them, lead poisoning. They never want to talk about that damn leaded gasoline. See, they never want to talk about it.
I've heard other people say that too.
Those companies are still around.
I've heard other people say that too.
There's been no lawsuits because all those people fucking are.
I don't think that's old. Like I said. I don't think that's the only factor.
I think it was one of them.
But I definitely think it was. And like I said, you're not the only person that said it. I've seen other criminologists and stuff like that like bring that up as well as another contributing factor. Yeah. But I mean, I think there absolutely is something to be said for all of the veterans that came back from were like kind of all fucked up. And you're talking about a time period in history too where it wasn't really accepted. For example, like a dude to go to like a counselor or something like that. You were seen as like, that was seen as effeminate, I guess, or you weren't like dealing with your shit. Like you were supposed to be stoic and you weren't supposed to talk about your problems or anything like that. You were supposed to like get on with it. So I kind of feel like a lot of dudes, they maybe had these like horrible emotions and they didn't really know how to deal with them. Like they couldn't talk to anybody about them and they couldn't, they didn't really know how to deal with them. So they just kind of like suppressed them and then it just kind of like leaked out in other ways. Like you said, with alcoholism or violence or other types of things like that.
Glenn's asking,
not healthy.
How come Ira had an Irish name? Was he part white? Indians and Irish crossbred going all the way back to 1600s, man.
Yeah.
All the way back. I mean, what was his name? Quanah Parker was one of them. He was part Irish. And he was a big Indian chief. He was around. So, and then... The Seminoles in this area had a lot of Irish type members. That was one of the reasons why Andrew Jackson, he thought this whole tribal identity stuff was bullshit. You were either an American or you were an Indian, and if you were going to be an American, you had to be an American citizen. If you wanted to be an Indian, you had to go out to the Indian territory. You couldn't have. He didn't believe, and a lot of people agreed with him, that you couldn't have. You couldn't have dual citizenship, basically, is what he was saying. You had to have one citizenship or another. So, and then he'd come out and say, if you look at a lot of these Indian tribes, they put on white man's clothes and come into town and buy things from the store and live like anybody else, and they're white. Okay, so they're not. They're white when they want to be white, and then they're Indian when they're Indian when it comes time to pay taxes. That was one of the things that Jackson said about him. So there were some people that, if you probably did a DNA test on them, they'd be fully European, but they were living a tribal lifestyle. There was lots of those. So it's not as cut and dried as Hollywood lead you to believe. And it was all depending on what area. Some areas were mixed. Some areas were, like, evidently there were parts of the Seminoles were just Irish people. You know, they had Indian relatives, but they were just Irish American people. And black people are also Seminole. So the modern ideology about racial identity and tribal groups, it doesn't apply. They were all interbreeding.
Well, it's always much messier.
It's a lot messier than that, right?
And always has been, like,
yeah,
from the beginning of humanity.
Yeah, and not all Native Americans. Here's another thing: is that fucking the Hollywood notion is that the Indians all got along. No.
Well,
no.
We'll get into that a little bit.
No, the Indians didn't like each other.
Depending on, like,
yeah.
But yeah,
it was just like Europe. The English and the French and the Germans constantly added each other. The Indians were just like that. The Seminole could not stand the Creek. That was one of the reasons why they didn't want to go to Indian Territory, because they were going to put them in. They were going to give them land that was neighboring the Creek Indians, and they were like, "Fuck no, we hate them people," because they'd been at war with them. So, you know, they didn't want to go. Eventually, they did go, or some of them did. Most of them took American citizenship. There were 3 Seminole Wars here, each one smaller than the last, and they were kind of different, but it worked out.
I was just reading a book recently where he brought up the long-standing feud between the Blackfeet and the Crow.
Yeah.
How they couldn't stand each other.
Yeah. So some of them were just mortal enemies.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, so
Jeffy Art says, my grandpa made my dad and his brothers kneel on rice holding out soup cans. If they dropped their arms, they were whipped with the belt. That's not, like, what is even the point of that? Like, what is... I don't know. That's the thing. See, I don't really understand the point of that, like why you would do that to a little kid, but okay. I mean, I get where they're coming from, like, you know, given what they went through, but that's still just like a little kid.
Listen to what Oracle says. Read what Oracle says.
What I find interesting is many Native Americans have a strong tradition of intellectual property, as in, hey, you can't perform that dance. That's my family's dance, and you aren't kin. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Well, and the thing about it, too, is that, which is one of the things we'll get into when we're talking about the Code Talkers, is that a lot of their traditions were orally passed on, because a lot of their languages were orally passed on. A lot of them didn't write them down. And so everything was memory, and it was passed down, like, from generation to generation. So I can see how they would get, like, really, really invested in their own stuff, like their own stuff that they were doing in there. Like, they see some, like, fucking neighbor tribe doing it, they'd be like, hey, you fucking knock that off. You're not allowed to do the fucking dance like that. Yeah. That's our deal.
Yeah, you can go on YouTube and just look up tribal dances, and they have whole events where they go and they put on their traditional attire, and then they go out there and do their dances and making music and shit, and fucking, you know, it's cool. They still do it. Get together and have a big family. I think they actually call them powwows.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, they call them powwows.
Yeah, I went to a couple when I was. Yeah, I went to a couple when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But you know, a long time ago, somewhere in Florida. I guess it was probably around here, someplace, Daytona or DeLand or Ocala or some shit like that. I don't really remember where it was, but it was around here somewhere. It's fun though. All right. So how long have we been talking? Okay, so we've been talking for like 45 minutes. You want to like get into the shit?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So a little bit before we get into the like Code Talker stuff, I kind of want to get a little bit into, like I said, some of the other tribes participate in this too, but you know, I want to talk a little bit about the Navajo because they're kind of like the best known ones. So I wanted to get a tiny bit into sort of like their history of their conflicts, like with the U.S. government particularly. And in particular, this one thing which was called the Long Walk, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I kind of feel like, well, there was kind of like, I don't want to call it an uneasy peace, but there wasn't really like open hostilities until about 1849, when the, you know, the European Americans that were kind of like, you know, in the country then, actually scalped one of their Navajo leaders, whose name was Narbona, and that was in 1849. So after that, they got a little bit mad about it, as you would. And then, like, hostilities started to escalate. Now, there were, I believe, 3 kind of truces or treaties or whatever that they tried to go like over the next couple years. And in those treaties, they would always say, oh, well, the U.S. Army is supposed to protect the Navajo, but they never did. It never really worked out that way. The Army would basically allow other Native American tribes, specifically the Utes, and also Mexicans, to essentially steal from the Navajo, like take their livestock and stuff like that, and capture them and use them as slaves, and the Army wouldn't do anything about it. So there was that. They had also set up some government schools, like the Bureau of Indian Affairs. They had set up some schools there to ostensibly like educate the Navajo children, but what they were really doing was trying to make them not be Navajo. Like they weren't allowed to speak their native language. They would get punished. They weren't allowed to like wear traditional dress or like talk about their culture or anything like that.
They're trying to get them to damn join the America.
Yeah, they're trying to like whiteify.
Get rid of that culture. Yeah,
whiteify them is what they were essentially trying to do.
Yeah,
and
make them like white people.
Yeah, that's what they were doing.
They tend to do that everywhere. They're doing that in Mississippi to us.
You guys are white people.
Well, now the North, after the fucking Civil War, the North came in and tried to fucking make everybody into Yankees. Where's the? I'll make another drink.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So, right around 1862, this is when the Civil War was still going on. Now, the government at that point, they kind of like decided, well, we're going to get rid of this Navajo problem. I guess there had been like, Navajo had been like raiding and like other people had been raiding them, and it was just kind of like a big nightmare. So they were kind of like, okay, well, we're going to do something about this. So there's this guy named James Carleton, and he was the commander for the New Mexico Military Department. And he gave the orders to Colonel Kit Carson, who's actually quite a famous person in American history. If you went to school, at least we learned about him like when I was in school. They basically told him, go into the Navajo territory and get them to surrender. Like he was going to set up a surrender, to them. So he goes there in summer of 1863, and probably not surprisingly, no Navajo showed up. They're like, fuck that, we're not going to surrender. And so none of them showed up to this supposed meeting where they were supposedly supposed to surrender. So Kit Carson and his guys got mad, and they're like, okay, well, they go into the territory, they try to persuade the Navajos to surrender to them, and they're like, okay, well, they won't. So they went completely scorched earth, is what they decided to do. They said, well, we're going to make them surrender. So what they did, they got the Utes, the other tribe who did not like the Navajo. He kind of enlisted their help. He's like, I need you to capture as many Navajos as you can. And they basically burned down their fucking, their villages. They cut off their supply lines. They were trying to starve them out, and basically like force them into surrendering. And that worked really well because the Utes, like I said, who were another tribe, were very familiar with the Navajo. They lived not that far away from them, and they were kind of like aware of their culture and like where their strongholds were and shit like that. So January of 1864, there was like this big, huge assault. They basically like burned down all of their houses. They killed other livestock. They captured a bunch of them. If you tried to get away, they killed you. Some of them did get away, but not really that many, and it ended up being like really cold. They couldn't have any food, so like even the ones that got away, like eventually were kind of like forced to surrender. After the surrender, in 1864, came something called the Long Walk. Now this was essentially like a deportation, because at this point where the Navajo lived was in what is now Arizona, and part of New Mexico, and they lived between what they called like the four sacred mountains, like that was their sacred tribal lands. So they made them leave, and this is essentially, and I saw several sources call it essentially an attempted ethnic cleansing. They were just trying to, so they marched them off the lands, all of them, whether it was pregnant ladies, old people, children, whatever. They're just like, you're gonna walk to your new area. We're driving you off your sacred lands, and we're gonna like make you walk there. And it wasn't just one, it was like 53, I think, like forced marches over a couple of year period. So this took 18 days. It was 300 miles. At least 200 people died on this particular walk, and they moved them into like this 40 square mile area, which eventually had about 9,000 people on it. So they were there for a couple of years. Finally, in 1868, the Navajo were allowed to come back to the government. They actually gave them back their ancestral lands. I believe that's the only time that happened in the history of the United States. I believe they were given 3.5 million acres, something like that they had previously lived on. So they actually did give it back to them, and they allowed them to come back like 3 years after the long walk, after a bunch of them died. So considering how kind of shittily they were treated, it is amazing, as Granthers brought up, that when World War I, World War II, when that came around, the Navajo and other tribes were quite willing to join the army and fight for the United States, and indeed many of them did. Like you said, I think that's something that maybe a lot of people don't know about, like, the military history of the United States, is that a lot of them were very, very overrepresented. Yeah. In regards to their population. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they were more likely to join than any other ethnic group. There weren't as many of them.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
They joined at a lot higher rate.
Yeah.
So when I was in, each company always had one or two. And that's fucking fantastic when you think of how few of them there were.
Yeah, because there really weren't a lot.
In a company of 100 men, there's like 2 or 3 of them. You know?
Yeah.
And they came... from tribal areas, is where they're coming from. Now, there were also islanders, Pacific Islanders and Micronesians. And the Micronesians were almost kind of like mercenaries. Somehow they were able to join the U.S. Army as a profession. There's a lot of stuff, right now, people talking bad about mercenaries, need to sentence these mercenaries to death. Well, shit, you're going to be sentencing fucking 10% of the U.S. Army to death because 10% of them technically are mercenaries. From Ireland, you don't have to be an American citizen to join the U.S. Army. That's a misconception.
Yeah.
As long as you're not a criminal, they let you in. You're not going to get a secret clearance.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but so we had guys from Ireland. We had guys from Samoa, Micronesia. This is in the 90s. Trying to think of any other weird countries.
It's just weird country.
I'm gonna call it a weird country. It's just a country you don't realize, like, what the hell are you doing in here?
You don't meet that many people in your day-to-day life. I mean, well, Ireland's not weird. I've met Irish people in my life, but
no, it's like, why isn't he in the British Army? Like,
right.
Fuck that. He's joined a big army. Yeah. I forgot to tell you. Lots of fucking El Salvador. Because we had a lot of Contras. Guys that were one of my squad leaders was an ex-Contra. And his wife was a Contra. And they came out of that school of America. I think it was El Salvador. Yeah, El Salvador. And, man, we used to hear stories about his wife. His wife was a Contra, but she couldn't serve in the U.S. Army. And his wife had killed several dozen people. She was a fucking badass. And evidently it wasn't friendly shit that she was doing. They were doing interrogations and stuff, so... I didn't really get all the details. I was under the impression that she fucking tortured people and killed them. Sandinistas.
Yeah.
Because they were... If you got Contras in your unit, they were being hidden there. In other words, they were evacuated to safety. Is what you're talking about. We created them, so we had to take care of them afterwards because they kind of lost that war. You couldn't let them stay there; they'd get killed. So they they stayed in army service forever. They brought them into our army. They took care of them, keep them on post, gave them new identities and shit.
Thank you, Bryce.
What? Oh yeah, we finally getting a super chat up in this motherfucker. I forgot all about super chats. We haven't had a super chat in about what? A week?
Something like that.
I forgot we've made super chat. What's he saying?
My understanding is they viewed it as working with not for the U.S. government in defense of their lands. Yeah, it does seem like the ones that they talked to on the documentaries that I saw mostly seemed like there's like, well, we live here. These are our lands. So, yeah we're going to defend it. So I think that it wasn't so much, oh, we're working for like, an entity that fucked us over.
Yeah, no.
So much as like we're defending our our homeland and our families. That's kind of how they
because
thought of
the
it.
U.S. Army would come in, the U.S. government would come in and give them uniforms, trainings, and equipment and say, defend your area. Here's the flag.
Yeah.
Defend your area under our banner. Same thing Xerxes was doing. He was trying to do that for the fucking Spartans, it's join my side and your fucking banner will fly high above Europa, all that kind of shit. I'll put you in charge. We were doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Shifting alliances, but Native Americans were Americans.
Well, yeah, they were here before the Europeans.
Here before us.
So
yeah. And,
so don't be saying it's like, oh, they're not. They're over there gone. Okay,
yeah.
bro.
And technology.
I was here several thousand years before you.
Yeah.
So.
And the convenience of technologies came to them before the government got a hold of them. So they knew that good things were coming. Shit like steel and pots and pans and guns and horses and.
Well, they largely seemed very practical.
Yeah,
They're just kind of like, hey,
right.
whatever some good shit that we can use,
Right.
man. Yeah, hand it over.
So they traded and they had money, And then the government would come up and fuck them over. But that same government was fucking us over too. And a lot of it wasn't government too. A lot of it was private businesses. Fucking railroad company was out of control. They'd fuck over anybody.
Oh, good lord. We should do a show about
On
that
the
shit.
fucking railroads. Yeah,
Fucking
people don't
hell.
realize.
That's a whole
Yeah.
hornet's nest.
Yeah. People don't realize that there wasn't really any kind of federal government as you would know it until World War II.
Thank you, Straw Dog 78.
Thank you very much.
You guilted him into it.
Yeah, I'm killing these motherfuckers in his money.
Crying poor.
There was not a central government as you would know it until World War II. It really didn't become totally solidified until that time. Everything was local. The real power players were corporations. Corporations were more powerful than the railroad had its own justice system, its own army, ran its own courts, and sentenced people to death.
Yeah, they killed people,
Yeah.
and they got away with it.
Yep.
Lots of people.
Yeah. Corporations are much more powerful than governments. They still are. And during World War II, the corporations and the fucking U.S. government merged into one thing. That's very dangerous. President Eisenhower was warned us in his farewell speech about fucking a monster that had been created with fucking unwarranted powers. And it's all coming to fruition. It's an oligarchy. The political shit is just window dressing to give you the illusion of choice. You don't have a choice. It owns both parties. And a populist uprising will be crushed as fascism. But they're fascist. That's what it is. Fascism is the merger of fucking state and corporate powers. And then throw in a little bit of monarchy because they're all the same families. They're just real good at hiding what they are. And anyway, the Indians and just Americans and everything were kind of fucking, especially out in fucking unclaimed territory where there wasn't any rule of law, no way to enforce anything, no telecommunications. You were fucked out there. You had to fucking watch your own back. A gang of fucking banditos could come and get you. A whole bunch of fucking cowboys and fucking outlaws could jump on you. Indian tribes jumping on each other, or a damn fucking corporate fucking army could come in, with a railroad behind it and fuck your whole town up. There were mass graves along the sides of those fucking where the railroad went. They found mass graves of fucking dead bodies with fucking signs of bullet holes in them. We're talking hundreds of them, right on the side, with not a peep of what had happened. All them fucking Irish dudes, Irish and Chinese dead guys,
and Chinese, yeah,
just stacked up on top of each other, like several hundred of them, and
they didn't need them anymore.
Not a peep of what happened.
Nope.
I think it was a revolt.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
They were working them and not paying them.
Exactly.
Gun them down.
That's what I'm saying.
Send them some more. Send them some more Irish and Chinese. That's what happened.
Yeah.
No witnesses. And probably the Pinkertons or their security companies. They had a railroad security company that's fucking more better trained and fucking better armed than the U.S. Army.
Stardog78 said, speaking of Native Americans, they used to have a communal way through their rituals of reintegrating their warriors into normal society after seeing heavy combat. Consequently, PTSD wasn't an issue. See, that's really interesting. I wonder if maybe that's why...
Where's the data, though?
Well, no, but I mean, maybe because they had a way of dealing with it. I think the reason that there was so much of that like alcoholism and domestic abuse and things like that going on with veterans of the World War I and World War II was probably not because they were bad guys or anything like that. It was because there was no framework in place for them to talk about the shit or process it in any way that would be like healthy for them or purge it.
World War I and World War II and Vietnam did not resemble each other though in any way, and the veterans weren't the same.
That's true.
No, they're nothing alike. World War I was mostly about sitting in a damn trench being eaten to death by lice and just enduring shelling.
Oh my God, did you guys see that documentary?
Yeah.
Holy shit. The one that, was it Peter Jackson that did it? Like that World War I one? Remember we saw that at the theater?
Yeah.
That World War I documentary that was all like colorized footage,
Yeah.
like from the time. Holy fucking shit.
Yeah. Those guys came back with a lot of problems because it was a lot of pent up stuff.
Yeah.
Because they never really fought. They just sat there and got killed. And then when they got out, when they went back home, nobody even knew that it happened. World War I was not a thing. When they went back home, the public didn't know, didn't really know what World War I was, because there wasn't a modern media. So they had no idea what the dudes had went through.
Yeah.
Their idea of what war was is you got on a horse and you rode around and shot at other people. There wasn't any of that in World War I.
Right.
They didn't even have a good grasp of what aerial combat was. The average person who
you didn't see it. It wasn't something that you dealt with every day. Like you said, we didn't have a mass media like we have nowadays.
So it took a few decades, really. People didn't really know what World War I was until the 30s. And that was a long time after.
So can you imagine going through the shit? Because like I said, please see that Peter Jackson documentary, because I mean you can read about World War I all day long. Yeah. Because I read a lot about it, but seeing it, seeing the actual footage and seeing it colorized and it looks like modern, it's fucked up. I mean, just seeing it right in front of your face, and to go through that. And then to come back home and to have absolutely nobody get it. You can't even tell anybody about it because they're just whatever. They don't even know
they wouldn't understand what you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying. And it's just it must be so isolating.
They said that you felt like you were a different species of human beings.
Yeah, I think some of them said that on that documentary too.
And that you were lucky to find another World War I veteran, because then you could actually talk about how stupid other people were and how little they knew of what had happened. And, because they didn't know. World War I was confined along the damn no man's land. It was confined along a front. It didn't affect the rest of society. World War II made a different kind of veteran. It depended on what theater you were in and how long you were in combat. But when it came to American veterans, they actually, I think, suffered the least when it came to psychological stuff. Because they had a way of venting, you know what I mean? They actually got to do things. Some guys reported that they loved it, that it was just riding around in armored vehicles, shooting stuff up, and having exciting tank battles. And
the American troops entered much later.
Yeah, right. The guys who fucking really got fucked up were the Germans. The Germans basically fought to the last man. They didn't really have PTSD problems because they're all dead, most of them. They all died.
Can't have PTSD when you're dead.
Yeah, you can't have PTSD when you're dead. And those pilots flew until they died.
Grim
German
betrayal.
pilots. And then the Russians. With the Russians, the entire...
I was going to say the Russians.
The Russians,
really
the entire civilization had PTSD, because I think the Germans killed tens and tens of millions of civilians.
That's what I'm saying.
Going through there, they were fucking burning civilians alive in churches and fucking burning down the whole... Because Germany's war against Russia was a war of annihilation. They didn't want anything from Russia. They just wanted to vacate it of people. You can't negotiate with that, okay? They just come in and kill you. They want the land. It was a war of annihilation. They wanted to make Russia their country. So the civilians were the targets. And that's why Russia is very tough to this day. They know warfare in ways that Americans and some Europeans know it, but the Russians know warfare in ways that American civilians could never know warfare. Those dudes are fucking masters at it, especially wars of maneuvers. In other words, maneuver combat, combined arms combat. They're real good at that. They're not like us. They're not dependent on aircraft. They don't need that. They'll do it on the ground, man to man, and they're good at it. As the world is seeing now, they're very good, and they're tough. They don't care about casualties. Casualties part of war. You know what I mean? Oh, 100,000 dead? No problem. That's nothing compared to what happened, World War II. That's their thinking. They can absorb fucking a shit ton of casualties. Now, there's not as many as Russians as there used to be, though. That's the difference. There used to be a lot more Russians, but the Germans killed so many of them.
That's what I'm saying. That's why there's not that many Russians, because of that. Oracle said, yeah, that was Peter Jackson. Yeah, that documentary I was talking about. She said the colorization isn't so much the fix as it is correcting the speed of the film, in my opinion. Yeah.
And stabilizing it.
Yeah, because we're used to early films, she says, having that herky-jerky action going, so people don't look quite real in that footage. Yeah. But Jackson's work made the film subject look like people, not mechanical dolls. Yeah, I think that was, like, more than the colorization. Right. So I think that was what was... Because I'd seen some of that footage before, but... Yeah, it's just like seeing anything from back then. It's like, those are real people, like, intellectually, but it doesn't quite look real. It's,
the veterans that got it the worst were American Vietnam veterans. They were kind of got it the worst because that was a war where the infantry was being used as bait. You send them out on patrol, you wait for them to get shot at. When they get shot at, a couple of them get killed. They call for air support or artillery strikes. Jets come. They drop some bombs. Artillery shoots some fucking artillery shells into the bushes, and then once that hits, they run out there and see if they can find any bodies, and they usually can't find anything. And then they go back to the next patrol, and they just keep doing that over and over again. So it's a war of walking around in a damn jungle, getting a couple of your guys killed, over and over and over, and never really seeing the enemy. And that drive you out. That would drive you up the fucking wall, because you're not accomplishing anything. And that's that. And then they get home and people fucking treat them like shit. When they got drafted, they didn't volunteer for it. Call them baby killers and shit. Now, bad shit did happen there every now and then, but it was just a bad place. Everybody was frustrated.
Well, yeah, we shouldn't have been there.
No, shouldn't have been there. Yeah.
In the first place.
The whole thing is really all those wars really had nothing to do with the United States. It was always about making some rich guys in the United States richer. And the American people didn't really get much out of it. We really did. We should have definitely not been in World War I. And I question whether or not we should have been in World War II. But the Japanese did bomb Pearl Harbor.
Well,
so you had to do something to the Japanese. But Europe really was none of our business. The Russians had that. The Russians could have taken care of it. They did most of the work.
Linwood Sly said, watched episode 257 when you guys went off script about chocolate and old style candy. Necco wafers, Jenny said they tasted like third grade chalk, dust, and sadness.
Kinda.
They do.
I like them though anyway, especially the.
That's because you like gross things.
Oh, see.
As far as candy is concerned, you like gross.
I really like the black licorice flavored ones.
Those are also gross.
Anise flavored ones, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a big, like I said, I'm not a real big fruit candy fan.
Right.
Like, I like Starburst, I like shit like that, but...
Before I get too far off the subject about we shouldn't have not been in any of those wars, and I've joined up to go to one of them, the first Gulf War, it seemed to make sense at the time, but looking back on it, that was another one we got lied into, and other people got rich off of it, and they told us that would help the Americans. Keep the gas prices fucking reasonable. Nah, didn't have anything to do with that.
Of course not.
Nah, it was about making money. And a lot of people are waking up from a very long delusion, and it's the delusion of fucking empire building, fucking regime change, the delusion of globalism and all that kind of shit, and the delusion of nation building. You cannot go into somebody else's country and tell them how to handle their fucking business. You cannot make them accept your form of fucking government. It just doesn't work. Never. You wouldn't like it if a foreign country came in here in the United States and told you how to fucking... Look, your government sucks. Here's a new form of government. Adopt ours. You would say, no, fuck that. And, it's against human nature to do that. There's too many different cultures and religions involved. There's not going to be any empire. There's not going to be any globalism or any of that. That's not going to work. It's going to go back to like it was, which is tribal cultures, customs, beliefs, and religions, like it's been for thousands of years. Because it doesn't benefit you as a person to have a system like that. And you're not willing to send your children to go oil the jaws of a war machine you have to force that into existence, because you don't have children, okay, most of you, and you're not going to be able to import these people from Central America and send them over there to fight your wars so you can have a big globalist system. It's not going to happen, and it's going to fall apart. It's falling apart right now. It was all a delusion. Nation building only worked with Japan and Germany because we basically nearly wiped them out in a genocidal war where we were bombing their women and their children while they slept in bed. And when the war was over, they were totally dependent upon us for food. So yeah, Japan now has Christmas. At what cost? 63 fucking Japanese cities burned to the ground. Okay? Women and children. It wasn't worth it. You know, hate to break your hearts. But, so it's going back to the way it was. A multipolar world. Okay, let's go.
Judd says, my wife always tells me I like grandma and grandpa candy. Yeah. Well, now, some grandma and grandpa candy, I'm on board.
I love grandma and grandpa candy.
I like Werther's Original. That's grandpa candy. I like that. That kind of like ribbon candy. I kind of like that. But, you know, those little weird crunchy peanut butter bar. What the fuck are those called? You always get them at Halloween.
Not Bit of Honey.
No. Well, Bit of Honey are good too. You always get them at Halloween. They're like a little rectangle, and they're like kind of white on the outside, but they have like peanut. But they're like a little bit of like a Butterfinger inside, but not quite.
Abba Zaba.
No, it's not an Abba Zaba.
They're
just like they're individual.
It's almost kind of like a Butterfinger.
Yeah, I just said that.
Okay. Yeah.
I literally just said that like 5 seconds ago.
All right.
But they're like individually wrapped. I always got them at Halloween. Those are good. That's probably like grandma candy.
Yeah.
But other than that. Camp Guy said I love homemade peanut brittle. Oh man, I haven't had peanut brittle in a long time. I fucking love peanut brittle. All right, so we gonna get into this?
Go ahead.
All right. So since you were asking, more than 12,000 American Indians served in World War I, which was at the time 25% of the male Native American population at that time. A quarter of all Native American males. Served in World War I. In World War II, when the total Native American population was less than 400,000, they estimate that 44,000 Indian men and 800 Native American women served in the armed forces. So code talking. Now, usually when you're talking about code talking, it's usually Native American languages, but there have been some attempts with other lesser known, really any kind of like lesser known language will work, because I've seen like some sort of limited kind of attempts using stuff like Basque or Welsh or something like that doesn't have a lot of native speakers. But usually when you're talking about code talkers, it's usually Native American languages, mostly because most of them are not written languages. It's an oral tradition, and very, very few people outside of the tribes that speak them know that they exist even, or, you can't really learn them, you know what I mean? Because there's no books or anything like that.
You got to grow up talking it.
Pretty much. So outsiders, like, very, very rarely, and like I said, I think, even a lot of people, like, didn't even know that they existed, that there were so many of them. Now, interestingly, so during World War I, it turned out that the German forces during World War I, most of them could speak very good English and didn't really have too much problem intercepting codes. You know what I mean? Because the whole thing, yes, like the whole code thing goes back a long way, but there's always code breakers, and pretty much every code, other than the Navajo Code Talkers code, has been broken. Because everything relied on different types of codes that could be broken. If somebody came up with it, then you could figure it out. Even if you used one that was based on, because they used ones that were based on, books, like a particular book, and you had to go to a particular page, and they tried to, encode things in a way that other people couldn't figure out, but usually someone would figure it out, eventually. So what ended up happening, though, because a lot of messages were being decoded, there was a guy who was an American officer, and his name was Colonel Alfred Bloor. And he was in the 142nd Infantry in France. And he happened to notice that there were two guys who were actually Choctaw, and they were speaking to each other in their native language. And he thinks to himself, wow, I've never heard that language before. I can't understand them. And he knew that they were Choctaw, and he's like, I bet most other people wouldn't be able to understand them either. And maybe we can, like, do something with that. So basically, he kind of went to them and sort of, like, proposed, hey, you know, maybe we could do, like, a code, like, based on your native language, because I'm imagining not a lot of people speak that. So him and the two guys, they tested the code. And they basically, I don't think they did anything super complicated, but what they did was they did a test where they had a couple of messages that were, you know, analogous to what, you know, would be a real message like that, and basically put it into the Choctaw language. And it worked in the tests. So it actually had its first combat test in October of 1918. And they were doing this kind of like withdrawal of two companies of the 2nd Battalion, like from one French town to another. And it worked. The Germans, they picked up the message, but they're just like, what the fuck does that? They couldn't figure it out. And it was just like this surprise that it happened. So he's like, okay, well, that was a success then. They also happened that they captured a German soldier during this time, an officer, and they asked him about it, and he just said, yeah, we didn't know what the fuck they were saying. We didn't figure that out. So they thought that was like pretty cool. Now, there obviously, as I said before, there had been a lot of Native Americans serving in World War I, and they had been utilized in other roles, like a lot of them were message runners and stuff like that. So for a little while, they put Choctaw people in each of the kind of like battalions so they could like transmit messages across the radio just using the Choctaw language. I don't know if they did like they did with the Navajo code talkers later, where they kind of like did a double up on the code where it wasn't just them speaking in their native language. They would do like other things too,
Okay,
like
so
to make it more complicated.
So they're battalion level RTOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sly knows what that is. So they're up at they were handed out by the regimental headquarters. Yeah, so okay. I didn't know if they were platoon level or company level, but at this point, battalion level. Battalion's about 400 guys. In this era, it might be a little bit more, maybe 500. The company was bigger back then, maybe 6. Okay, just trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
So for every 600 guys, there's one code talker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't a shit ton. I don't think there was like a shit ton of Choctaw, but there was enough of them that like they had, because like I said, they always had to have them in pairs, because like you had to have one guy with this, and then you had to have somebody to like translate it at the other end. You know what I mean?
Regiment has 3 battalions. Okay, so each battalion has its own RTO. Regimental headquarters has one. So that's how they're getting the messages out to the battalions. Battalions 4 companies. Companies 4 platoons. Platoons in this era probably about 50 men, probably 30 to 50. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after the war, like the guy that kind of like came up with the idea, he was just like, yeah, this worked out really good. He's like, the only shortcoming, and this was another thing that they kind of found with the Navajo code talkers too, but they overcame it in other ways, was that obviously the Choctaw language didn't have any words for stuff like machine gun or you know, or submarine or anything like that. So they had to like make some stuff up.
Metal fish, iron fish.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that the Navajo came up with. But yeah, so it's like they just kind of have like, if you had like they would just say like big gun or I think a little gun shoot fast was machine gun. So it's like, but they worked around it. You know what I mean? Because obviously they didn't have words for that. Also during World War I, you had Cherokee soldiers who were in the U.S. 30th Infantry Division, and they transmitted messages actually during the Second Battle of the Somme in France. Yeah. And that was in September of 1918. Now, as I mentioned earlier, German authorities, coming into World War II, knew about this from World War One. Matter of fact, Goebbels himself declared Native Americans are fellow Aryans. Gee, thanks.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I told you guys about that earlier, man. People didn't believe it.
Jesus Christ. It's
The Germans of the bent cross were silly, man.
they were silly.
They were very silly.
You guys are silly.
You couldn't really take anything they said about racial policies. You couldn't take it seriously because they just made shit up as they went along. Anybody they liked, they declared Aryans. Didn't matter what color they were. If they just liked you, okay, you're an Aryan. They're making you an honorary.
You're one of the good
Make you an
ones.
honorary cracker. That's what That's what they would do. Make you an honorary honky.
Nazis are ridiculous.
Yeah. People take it more seriously than it really was. They didn't take it
I
that
take
seriously.
them killing millions of people.
Yeah.
I take that pretty seriously.
Well, that part
but
was
their
serious.
beliefs were ridiculous.
Yeah.
Their beliefs were ridiculous.
They didn't take them that seriously. They just made shit up as they went
They just
along.
wanted to kill people and found
They wanted to
justifications.
destroy enemies and take over.
Yeah.
They just had their own fucking way of explaining and describing what they were doing. And it all depended on whatever day it was you were asking them. It was not a hard. They weren't going from a Bible or going. Okay, modern people think about, well, we have to have a system. All right, so you're imposed. They did not have a system. It was not really a system. Not really. The best fucking quote I've ever heard from a German was telling a story when he was a little kid with his dad in the living room listening to the radio, and they were listening to the Fuhrer, and they were listening to Goebbels, and Goebbels was going on and on about National Socialism, and he asked his dad, he says, "Dad, what is National Socialism anyway?" And his dad fucking answered the question correctly. He said, "National Socialism is the will of the Fuhrer." That's all it was. It was the will of the Fuhrer. Whatever the Fuhrer told you, that's what it was.
Well, see, in a way, that's kind of like religious
Yeah.
thinking, too.
Exactly.
It's just like, what's good? Well, what God says. Well, what does God say? What's
God
good?
says what's
It's
good.
circular
It's-
thinking.
Exactly. And it was done that way on purpose to give them the flexibility. The message behind the bent cross was sit down and shut the fuck up. That's what it was.
Don't question
sit down
it.
and shut the fuck up.
We're
That's
just going to
all.
do whatever we want,
Exactly.
and we will justify it after
Yep.
the fact.
Yep.
By whatever we pull out of our ass.
Exactly.
Which I kind of feel like is how most people operate.
Yep.
Sadly.
I think that's most of the world.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sad, but that is kind of how
Yeah.
most
Sit down
people
and shut the
operate.
fuck up. That's what it means.
That's how most people operate.
Do as you're told.
But so that's the thing. So the Germans actually were aware that in World War One, Native Americans had been used, like their languages had been used, like to code messages. So they were aware of that. So what they did, going into, I believe it was like in 1940 or thereabouts, like early 1940s, they sent a team of anthropologists to the U.S. to learn Native American languages before World War II broke out. So they were thinking ahead. But I guess they didn't really understand how many Native American tribes there are and how many Native American languages there are. Because when they got here, they were like, well, wait, which ones do you want us to learn? Because there's like hundreds. And they found the task way too difficult. That's what I mean. Like, a lot of the Native American languages, obviously this is a generalization because they're all very different from one another, but a lot of them, if you didn't grow up speaking them, they're very, very difficult to learn. Some of them have similarities with Asian languages in the sense that a lot of it, sometimes like one particular phoneme or like one kind of word or something like that will mean a bunch of different things depending on how you say it, like the tone that you say it in. So because it's an oral language, so it's meant to be spoken to one another. So a lot of it is in the sound of it. Like how long you hold a vowel, for example. Like it could mean this thing or it could mean that thing, depending on how many seconds you hold the vowel or whatever. So it's a very complicated language to learn if you hadn't. They're very complicated languages to learn if you didn't. And like I said, most of them are not written, so there wasn't like there was a book you could go to and like learn it. So the Germans they had a hard time, and ultimately like gave up on it. Now, because U.S. authorities, though, they figured out, like, what the little Nazis were up to. They're like, oh, shit, they're, like, over here trying to figure out, like, how to speak various Native American languages. And so, for that reason, they were kind of like, well, maybe we shouldn't do the code talker thing because they're onto it. You know, even though I don't think they really knew, like, how much they learned, but they were just kind of like, well, then we probably shouldn't deploy it, like, to any great degree because, you know, they might be able to, like, break it. But they did use it in a limited capacity. So the U.S. Army was actually the first branch that started recruiting code talkers. In 1940, they went into a place like Oklahoma and stuff like that and started recruiting people like Comanche, Chippewa, Hopi, like a bunch of different tribes, and they wanted them to be code talkers. So they would have kind of like all these recruiters that were going around, like I said, particularly like in the southwest like area. And some of them, like some of the code talkers didn't even weren't even technically in the military. They were just kind of like contractors, I guess, like working on the outside of it. And some of them like enlisted in the armed services. Some like got drafted. As I mentioned earlier, some that enlisted were actually like too young to enlist. Like some were, teenagers. Some were 15. Actually, a couple of them were older than, like, because some of them were like in their mid to late 30s, which is a little bit, because I think they don't really want them after like 35 or so. But some were a little bit older than that, but they enlisted anyway. So initially, in very, very early, like World War II, like early 1940s. So you got, at first, 17 Comanche code talkers. Now, 3 of these were not able to go across the Atlantic when they got deployed, like to Europe. So they actually ended up taking 14 of them. Now, so 14 of them, using the Comanche language to transmit codes, actually took part in the Normandy invasion. They were in the 4th Infantry Division in Europe. So what they had come up with, what they did, was they had put together like a vocabulary of 250 code terms. And these were essentially, like I said, they were kind of like, words for various things that they needed like communicated, just translated into their own language. And again, they had a thing where, because a lot of Native American languages didn't have words for tanks or things like that, so they'd have to come up with some kind of like phrase, to convey that. So, like, for example, like the word for tank, they would use the word for turtle. For a bomber, they would say pregnant bird, which is actually like pretty clever when you think about it. They called a machine gun a sewing machine. And they called, I love this one, they called Adolf Hitler crazy white man. Crazy white man. I'm like, well, you're going to have to narrow that down a little bit. But when they said crazy white man in the Comanche language, that's who they were talking about. They were talking about Hitler. So, again, like I said, they usually worked in pairs. So you had 2 Comanche code talkers assigned to each regiment. And then the rest of them were at the 4th Infantry Division headquarters. Now, so they landed on Utah Beach, actually, on June 6, 1944, and started, like, transmitting messages from there. Some of them got wounded, but actually none of them got killed. So shortly after this, other branches, U.S. Marines, most famously, and the Navy, kind of followed a year or two later. And this is where we got into the Navajo code talkers. Like I said, probably the most famous of the lot. And how this ended up happening, kind of similar to how it happened in World War I. You have this guy named Philip Johnston, and he was a civil engineer. He worked for the city of Los Angeles, and he was a civilian. Now, what had happened with him was that he had served in World War I, but he was actually the son of missionaries that had lived on a Navajo reservation. So he had actually grown up. He was a white kid, but he had grown up on the Navajo reservation and spoke fluent Navajo. One of the very, very few white people to do so. So it occurred to him that, well, not that many people speak the Navajo language other than the Navajo, so it's like we could really use that, like, to encode messages. So he decided he was going to go to the military and, like, see if they would do it. So basically, like I said, after Pearl Harbor happened and a bunch of Navajo enlisted in the armed forces, this was kind of like a good time for this to happen. Now, as I mentioned, Navajo in particular, like many Native American languages, is a very, very complex language. The grammar is very complex, and even with its kind of closest relatives, like language relatives, it is not intelligible to even people that, that whose language is like quite closely related. It was also at the time unwritten. It has since been written down, but it wasn't at the time. So basically, Philip Johnston was like, not a lot of people speak this. It hasn't been written down, so it's not like anybody can find a code book or anything like that. So I think this will be like a good thing. It basically just had very complex syntax. As I said, it relied a lot on tonal things. Like I said, particularly one thing where it was like a vowel. If you said it like for this many, like for this long, it meant this, or if it was longer than that, it meant this, or it was like really short, it meant this. So it's like the same sound could mean lots of different things depending on the tone that you said it in, which, like I said, a lot of Asian languages are like that as well. So he goes to early 1942. He goes to the commanding general of the Amphibious Corps, who was Major General Clayton Vogel, and he kind of proposed the idea to them, which they liked. They're like, okay, well, we're going to test this out. So what they did was they set up like simulated combat conditions. You know what I mean? Like, you're being shelled, you're being this, that, and the other thing. And here are some messages that are just like messages which you would actually convey. And you have to send it like under like a really high stress situation to see if it would work. It worked like gangbusters. The dudes they had in there, they said they could transmit and decode a 3-line message in 20 seconds. They had, for the record, they had code breaking machines back then, which took about half an hour. So 20 seconds, a lot better. And these dudes could do it like super fast. They could do it under stressful situations without making any mistakes. So they're like, well, obviously, this is much, much better. Because like I said, the Navajo, they had a long oral tradition, so they didn't have any problem at all, like memorizing shit right away. They didn't write anything down.
Let me say something. People are saying, well, they need to use African click language this time, all this is obsolete because nowadays you have encode, decode, and fucking scramblers for radios now that make all this stuff obsolete. This was in a time where the enemy could hear your broadcasts. They could hear it.
Yeah, it was just regular radio. Yeah. I mean, anybody could pick it up.
Yeah, so you have to encode that somehow. You don't need that anymore. You can fucking scramble anything. And then you can unscramble things, but then you can also compress things. And nowadays, you don't even really need radio. I mean, I know for a fact that some real sensitive shit information was given from one unit to the next, having to do with stuff that was happening in the Middle East. Not through radio at all, but through the chat rooms of a fucking video game that was open to the public. Just because, what are the chances of someone being there in that particular live online game?
It's the hide in plain sight.
They
option.
hid in plain sight. Dudes fucking.
Because if you're trying to be sneaky, everybody be like, well, what are you trying to be sneaky about?
Yep. No, just talking to each other audio through a damn video game in the middle of a fucking live action video game. And, sensitive material went through that way. And that was a way of fucking transmitting a message between, they were fucking contractors, fucking security contractors in an echelon above reality, outside even the Army. The Army didn't even know about it. So, what you can do today is just unbelievable compared to what you could do in the 40s.
Yeah, I mean, the technology now is just kind of like off the chain.
All this shit
you don't really like need to do this anymore.
All this shit's obsolete.
I mean, nowadays people use like codes and stuff for ARGs. That's about it.
Yeah.
Like for fucking.
You got secure communications now. So you just don't need it.
Yeah. But it's still cool that, like, they just, like, had to work around it.
Right.
Like you said, it was just over radio.
Yeah.
Anybody with a radio could pick that shit up.
Yep.
Including your enemies. And they're like, oh, what's that you say? Mm-hmm. You're delivering this whole thing of, like, fucking artillery over here? Or
right.
You're moving your troops over there?
You only have to do this when you know that every one of your transmissions is being recorded and intercepted. And then they're going to work on it. Okay.
Yeah. Even if it's in code, because most of the codes were broken eventually.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, if you can come up with a code, someone else can figure it out.
Right.
Eventually.
So this strategic situation is no longer out there. All fucking real clandestine communication is done and fucking scrambled, compressed, and given across some medium that is not radio. Like I said, in the live chat room of a fucking Halo tournament. You know, something like that. No one would ever know.
Well, now they do because you just said it.
Well, that was a long time ago.
I know, I'm just kidding.
So,
you're blowing their cover.
Nah. There's so many places to communicate. An enemy government can't intercept everything everywhere. So you can just hide in plain sight because there are so many venues. You don't.
I mean, there's so much information out there that it's just kind of like, holy shit. You could just, like, trade messages on, like, some obscure blog somewhere about fucking who knows what.
In this day, everything was on the AM band or FM band.
Yeah. They just had to work within the limitations of their technology at the time. Which, you know...
Shortwave radio.
I just always, like, admire their fucking innovation, man. Because, like I said, they didn't know any better. It's like, this is what we got, and we got to, like, work around it somehow. It's like, nowadays, it's just kind of like, well, why don't they just do this and that and the other thing? Well, they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And they didn't know any different. Right. You know, because that's all they had.
And my little Baofeng radio, I can bring in a couple of radios in here and show it to you. Fucking outperforms anything I was ever given in the Army in the 90s.
And it's this big.
I'll show you my radios. Hold on.
How much were they?
I'll show. Each one's different.
He got these little radios, and he was trying to do a test either because we pick up because I guess some of our neighbors like in Black Bear Reserve, I think that they have some too because every now and then we pick up like some kids like running around like talking into the shit and like jumping in the pool and whatnot. So they must have got them for Christmas or something. But Tom wanted to test the range on it the other day. And so he gave me one of the radios, and then he had one of the radios, and he just went walking, like, all down the neighborhood and stuff like that when he was talking, and it was, like, crystal clear when he was, like, a long way away. So I thought that was, like, really funny. Yeah.
This here.
Look at that little bitty thing.
That's a Baofeng. It's the UV5 R, which is a little ham radio. Okay? This thing is fully programmable, can listen to 2 channels at once. It can scan. It can do all kinds of neat things. You can program it.
And Pookie likes to chew on the antenna.
I can pick up repeaters in my area and listen to people talking in New England out of this thing. When I bought this, it came with a battery and a couple of antennas. It was $20.
Yep.
I can change the power from a watt all the way up to 5 watts. My Army radio I was issued was a 1-watt radio and it weighed about almost 25 pounds.
Which isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You can like put that in your fucking pocket.
Right. So you can buy these off of
What a time to be alive.
eBay. This is the same radio in a waterproof container with better Motorola style attachments and everything. But this one's fully waterproof. And this one was only $35.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is an expensive one. This is an Ocean. This is another ham radio. This one was about $150 at the time that I bought it. It's also a 5-watt radio, but just a lot nicer, a lot more features on it. Although, knowing what I know now, this one for $35 probably be the way to go. And I have them both in ham and in GMRS, which is kind of like the new version.
I mean, they're handy to have. Particularly like in hurricanes and shit like that. Like if the power gets knocked out.
This little one right here with a little bitty short stubby antenna that I got on there. I tested it with Jenny and I walked down the...
Yeah, that's what I was telling her.
She sat right here in this office and I walked down the road almost a half a mile and was able to get her with this one with the other little short antenna. And it was just clear as day through all these walls.
Clear as bell, yep.
And in an emergency, if there's no cell phones, you use this. Now, would I take this on a mission? No, I don't really trust that battery at real low temperatures. I'd rather take this one. It's a better battery and fully waterproof. And that's a $35 radio. That's better than what they issued me in the Army.
Well, see, everything's getting better. Like,
Yeah.
all the technology is. I wouldn't go back to, like, the old days.
No.
Because, man, we had some shitty crap back
And the one that I had in the Army fucking had to carry it in a fucking rucksack and weighed 20-something pounds. It would just wear you out with all those fucking batteries. And it was a fraction of the power. Although, you know, really the power isn't that important because you're talking to people that are close to you anyway. You don't want anybody hearing you. You don't need blasting out all those damn radio waves.
Stardog78 said, did you guys ever cover number stations? We did. It was a long time ago. We did a show called Eerie Espionage.
Yeah.
And we talked about, I think we talked about Somerton Man and Isdall
Yeah.
Woman, and I think we talked about number stations also, I think, on that show. It was a very, very early one. It was one of the first ones.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot. That really wouldn't fill a whole show, the number stations. It's easy to know what number stations are.
I mean, they're creepy sounding.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, like, if you just kind of came across it randomly, it would be super creepy. Because they do sound creepy.
Yeah.
Even though I know what they are,
Right.
it still sounds really creepy. But again, there's kind of not really, like, a lot of use for that, I feel like. Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I think there's a couple still going, for whatever reason. But,
Yeah, it's probably Cuba.
yeah, maybe. I don't really
You just
know.
don't-
I haven't looked into it recently.
You just don't need it. You don't need shortwave radio anymore like you used to. There's too many. The internet
Yeah.
has kind of made that obsolete. But like I said, radio is a good backup.
Tammy said Tom ends up in the Keys. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, yeah.
He's going to walk to the Keys.
Yeah.
That would take a while. Bunny Data said, I used to have a scanner, police scanner, but they went to HD, but it was neat to listen to.
Yeah, you can't
I
listen
used
to
to
the
be a
cops
dispatcher. You can, yeah, you can. They actually, on the Dan Bell show the other night, there's an app. You just download an app into your phone and you can, like, listen to police scanner.
You were listening to Dan Bell?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, Dan Bell. Right.
His live stream.
Okay, so it's an app?
Yeah, you just
okay.
download an app to your phone, like a police
Right.
scanner app.
Yeah,
and
you
it picks up all the shit
You
from
can't listen
your
to the
local.
cops on a radio anymore because they're digital.
Yeah.
They're on digital. They're using
Yeah, so
digital
it's an
shit.
app. You just do it through
Okay.
your phone. Because that's what they were doing.
Okay.
Because Dan was like, he told, who's his little buddy that his friend that he's always with, the kid with the glasses. It's
Yeah, I
not.
don't
It's
know.
not Dylan, is it? No.
I forgot
Maybe
his
his name's Dylan, but yeah. But they were in the car, like, driving around Baltimore, and he's like, download the police scanner app to, like, see if we can find some exciting, like, shooting or something.
Yeah.
So it's like they downloaded the police scanner app, and they were driving around looking for crimes.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the whole thing because it was like 3 hours, but I was just like watching some of it and I was like laughing. But yeah, you can just download. He downloaded it in like 2 seconds and he was like listening to the police scanner. So yeah, that's what you do. You just listen to it, just like everything else. Everything's an app on your phone.
Yeah, buddy, saying in the Army, we had a code book that changed daily. Yeah, it was called the SOI. That was for encode, decode. Used to do the same thing. That was standard infantry stuff. That's what those number stations are doing. They're giving out a block of numbers the same time. It's traffic is always the same, so it always looks the same. You can't tell if it was a long message or a short message, or if there's a message or not a message. There may not have been a message. It just broadcasts a fucking 100-character message every day. And you can use what's called a one-time use pad to encode, to decode that message. But you have to have the pad, or you have to know the key. It might be. It's January the 1st, so 12, or 1. The first page of chapter 1 of Catcher in the Rye is the fucking pad. And what it's doing is it's giving you numbers or letters, and next to the first time that letter or number is mentioned, or there's some kind of key you have in your mind, you'll be able to point at the letters based on what's in your head.
That's why
on that page to know what the code is, and you're given the key verbally. Like the book is Catcher in the Rye. The month is always the chapter. The day's date is always the page in that chapter. You know what I mean? And it goes up to 30. And that's the page you start on. That's what you're going to use as a one-time pad. So change it every day.
See, that's why I think that whole Somerton Man thing, like we did a show about that. That's why I think that shit was espionage shit, because they found that book, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
Yeah, it sounds like something you use as a one-time
Yeah, so
thing.
I kind of feel like that was like the key for like some messages and stuff, because that seemed like kind of random that would just like show up in someone's car.
The code book cannot be an obvious code book. You want it to be something that everybody has, a New Testament, a certain kind of New Testament.
That nobody
Or
would think it was weird if it was in your house.
Right, they find it and they don't confiscate it.
Right.
They're just like, okay.
Oh, like everybody's got a Bible, or everybody's got a thesaurus, or something. Well, probably not anymore.
Everybody has a novel.
Yeah. Wonder if anybody. What if they've used like some Stephen King novels for that?
See, the thing is that the number station is broadcasting out, and there's more than one agent, and each agent has his own key, so you don't hear the message of the other agents. You only hear the messages that are intended for you. And it might be that, well, my messages always come in on Thursday. So you're the Thursday man. Or it might be, my messages are Thursday at 4 o'clock. So Thursday at 4 o'clock.
Yes, that's you turn it on. And
so you turn it on, you wait. Okay, so what you're being sent is only good for your code book. It's only for you. No one else can understand that because they don't have the key. They don't have that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it's done. That way you can talk to all your spies in the field.
Camp Guy said, what if the German dude is a big J.D. Salinger fan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you wouldn't immediately jump to... I mean, if you're just hearing a big series of numbers, you wouldn't immediately jump to, oh my god, he's talking about Catcher in the Rye, like chapter whatever, page whatever. It's like you wouldn't necessarily jump to that. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through before you get to that place where you can like decode that.
Each spy has his own book. He knows when to listen to the radio. On what
it's
station.
like I have Portnoy's Complaint, I have Jude the Obscure, I have the mayor of Casterbridge, whatever. I'm just going to like.
And each guy's on a different day and time. So I'm Tuesday, 4 a.m. Like motherfuckers waking me up early for these messages.
God damn it! Why did I get the 7
And you see, the number station
code?
The number station is constantly putting it out at a regular time or constantly putting it out. That way, the person monitoring the station, the traffic is always the same. That way, they cannot match up radioactivity with something happening in the real world. Like every time that fucking radio says something, this motherfucker leaves his room. Then you know it's talking to him. You know what I mean? It's that, They can't do that. So radio traffic is constant.
Yeah, they've thought
It's always
of everything.
the same.
Yeah.
It's called Tradecraft. Okay? You have to understand the basics of Tradecraft.
All that kind of code shit is like fascinating to me. I love that shit.
How spies do shit. Spy shit. Spook the spook world.
Anything having to do with codes, I'm really into it. Tammy says everybody has Dianetics. I'm sure that's been used as a code book at some point. I do not have a copy of Dianetics, sadly. I should probably get one, but I don't want to pay for it.
Christopher Walken in fucking Dogs of War, his cover to get into what was it, Nairobi? Which African nation was that he was trying to get into? Did they make up an African country?
I think they did.
They made up. Yeah, his whole code was to be a fucking bird, or whether an ornithoptist, or what do they call him? He was a bird.
Ornithologist.
Ornithologist, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, it was like Birds of North America or some shit.
Yeah, he comes in, he says he's a bird watcher, they're not buying it. And they start asking him about birds, and he knows it. Because he fucking studied the shit.
He's like, what, you think I wouldn't do this? This is my job, motherfucker.
Yeah, they tortured his ass anyway. They didn't believe him.
Yeah.
That African
I learned all that shit about birds for nothing. They tortured my ass anyway.
Yeah, that African intelligence agent knew. He says, this fucking honky.
You're not a bird scientist.
You're not with that build. I'm just looking at you.
Knock it out.
Yeah, you're not a bird scientist.
Yeah, he said he was an ornithologist. That's right.
Yeah, Sly. If you didn't see Dogs of War, go see that shit. That was a fucking old school mercenary movie. Kind of cheesy, but I still enjoyed it. We saw it recently. It was good.
Yeah, we just saw it. I think we did a matinee on it, didn't we?
Yeah. It's like a.
I'm pretty sure they made up an African nation. Did they not? I don't think it was a real one.
No.
I can't remember.
No, but it came from a book about mercenaries from that era, from the 60s. And it's pretty accurate.
It always makes me laugh when they make up an African nation, though.
Well, they made up a Central American agent.
Yeah, they do
nation
that too.
for Predator 1. They didn't want to say El Salvador. They said El Hiagra, didn't they?
Yeah, which is funny because it's like, look, I took geography in school. It's like, I know that's not there.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
Yeah, I think it was El Hiagra.
They didn't want to use a real place because
Right,
then everybody
yeah.
there would get mad at them. I get it, but it's just funny because it's like obviously that's not a real country, but it's
Yeah.
like I don't know. I just think that's very funny when they do that. All right, so where was I? All right,
Said Nicolas Cage. No, it wasn't Nicolas Cage, man. It was fucking fucking Christopher Walken.
in Dogs of War.
Yeah.
Well, there
Dogs of
might have
War.
been more than one movie called that.
No.
And I think they were talking about, and somebody was talking about, there was a movie about, I think it was about the Code Talkers
Yeah.
that had Nicolas Cage in it, like from the early 2000s, I
Yeah.
think. So maybe that's what he was talking about.
No, I'm talking about the one with
Christopher Walken.
Christopher Walken in it. That's the one you got to see. It's from 1981, maybe, or late 70s.
I thought it was late 70s. I thought it was like 78, but I can't
Yeah.
really remember.
Old school shit, man.
Tammy said, I actually found a copy of Dianetics, I'm presuming, in my uncle's things when he passed away. I haven't been bored enough to read it yet.
That's back when people didn't know what Dianetics was. They just saw that.
They used to, there's the commercials in the 80s.
Oh yeah, the big volcano and
With
shit.
the volcano.
That's where Zeno lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he destroyed all the thieves.
Everyone was like, ooh,
with the
because
atomic bomb.
they tried to sell it as like self-help because
Yeah.
that was like very big in the 70s and 80s, like buying self-help books.
Yeah.
But even back then, I didn't know that was Scientology
me
then,
go
but even then, I was just kind of like, no, self-help. But the weird thing about it is like it's not self-help. You're not helping yourself. You're buying a book, and some other motherfucker is trying to help you. And I'm like, that's not gonna work for me. I'm sorry. That bitch don't know me. But you know. All right. So where was I? Oh, okay. So yeah. So the guys obviously were much faster than the machines because they had memorized all the stuff. So they gave them like a 3-line message, and it took them like 20 seconds. Literally 20 seconds. They transmitted it to their other guy, and that guy like translated it on the other end, and it took 20 seconds. And they're just kind of like, okay, well, this is amazing. It's like way better than the fucking half an hour the machine took. So they're like, okay, well, we're gonna do this. So basically they recommend to the Marines, well, okay, you can recruit 200 Navajo. We're gonna like set up this little program here. Now, thank you.
You talking about Dianetics?
No.
Oh, because you
I
were
was
saying
getting-
that wasn't self-help. That was fucking self-help.
No, I said
They
no.
want to help themselves your fucking money.
Well, yeah, that's the only thing that's helped.
Yeah.
No, I said self-help. The whole concept of self-help, I'm like, you're not really helping yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's a book that was written by some motherfucker that don't know you,
Right.
telling you how to help yourself.
Right.
I don't think that's self-help. It's some other motherfucker that don't know me that
Right.
trying to tell me my life. I don't like it. But you know, I know other people get shit out of it, but I don't. I don't like being told what to do by some bitch that don't know me. So yeah, well, I don't even like being told what to do by people do know me. So you know what I mean. There's that too. So okay, so they're gonna recruit 200 people. But the first ones they got, initially they started with 30. One guy washed out, so they had like 29. And this was the first group that actually came up with the whole code. So these first 29, they sent them to boot camp in May of 1942. And then they got sent to Camp Pendleton, and this is where they developed the code. What they did, as I said, I kind of feel like in World War I, what they did was they basically just translated English messages into, Choctaw or whatever, without really like encoding it any further. But what they did with this one was a little bit different. They added like a little bit, like another layer on top of it. So what they did, they kind of modeled it on, you had like the phonetic alphabet thing where, they have English words to represent letters of the alphabet. So they had that. They initially were going to do, well, we're just going to spell everything out, like using those words. But they said, no, that will take too long. So they're like, okay, well, we'll do that. We'll have the alphabet, but then we'll also have the most commonly used words, and we'll come up with words to encode, for that, like for various like concepts and, like planes and tanks and shit like that. So they had like words for all of that. Now, because, as I said, Navajo didn't have words for tanks or submarines or anything like that, so they would, like, show pictures of various things, like a, fucking destroyer or whatever, and they're like, okay, what does that look like to you? Like, come up with something, like a phrase that's memorable to you,
Yeah.
and, translate that into your language, and then we'll translate that and code it that way. So that's what they did. Now, the first type of code they created, which was, this is the type 1 code. So this was 26 Navajo words that stood for the letters of the alphabet. And that could be used to spell out a word if you didn't have another word for that, right? For example, you had the Navajo word for ant, which is wolachi. And that was if you wanted the letter A in English. You had B was shush, which means bear. C was moasi, that's cat, and so on. Now, most letters, except for the ones at the end of the alphabet that nobody uses all that much, like Z and shit, those unpopular letters, most of the letters had also 2 alternates. For example, like B, it could be bear, it could be badger, it could be like other things too, just to like mix it up a little so it wasn't like too easy to figure out. Then you had like your type 2 code, and these were words that could be directly translated from English into Navajo. Now, this ended up being, at first, it was a dictionary of about 211 words, and then they expanded it later into 411. And these were military words and names that didn't exist in the Navajo language prior. So, for example, as we mentioned earlier, there was no Navajo word for submarine, so they called it beshlo, which is iron fish, which you said before, yeah. And then they would translate iron fish, like I said, into Navajo, which is beshlo. And then they had like the word for shark, which is kalo, that was a destroyer. A battleship was a whale, that was lotso. Silver oak leaf, that was chechil beta besh ligai. That was lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, a silver leaf.
Yeah, that's why they called it that. They just, anything that was like, they would show them the concept and they'd be like, they try to come up with something they could remember. Yeah. Because they had to memorize all this. They couldn't write it down. Yeah. Because they didn't want anything like being found.
Yeah. Gold leaf would have been a major.
Yeah, they had words for that. Because like I said, I think it's the Navy website, because I looked on there earlier. The Navy website has the whole thing, like all laid out like in a chart, and you can like look at all the words and shit like that. They came up with, it's like really interesting. They had names for countries too, which I thought was really interesting. America was Nehema, which means our mother. Germany was Beshbechahe, that means iron hat.
Yeah. Iron helmets.
Yeah, iron hat. Yeah. A few of the country names, hilariously, most of them were pretty neutral. Yeah. A couple of them not real PC. Yeah. So I thought I had to mention that.
No,
one of them.
Lay it on us.
One of them was Zinni. Yeah. That means blackies. Okay. That was Africa.
Well, that's all
of Africa.
Yeah, all of Africa, yeah.
Blackies. And then, guess what they called Japan?
What's that?
Bena Ale Tsotsi.
What's that?
Slant eye.
Slant-eyed people. Yeah.
That's what they called Japan. Those were really the only 2 that were kind of like, no. The rest of them were pretty neutral. You know what I mean? Like, like floating island, I think was Philippines and shit like that. So it was just like more like what the country looked like or what its main feature was.
Where the hell's Tila?
You know what? I was just thinking about her earlier today. I haven't seen her in a long time. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I hope she's okay.
Yeah, Tila.
Maybe her schedule changed or something.
T, if you're out there, go ahead and drop something in the chat line. Go in there in the chat.
She
might just be listening.
I mean, I was thinking about her earlier. Yeah. Today, and I was just kind of like, man,
she was getting ready to move, wasn't she?
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
They were trying to get out of San Francisco.
Maybe she moved and like maybe her schedule changed or some shit like that.
She might be in the middle of a move,
or she's kind of in the middle of because we know how that.
They were even talking about leaving the state.
So maybe they're going through some shit right now.
And Sandra, never saw Sandra again.
Yeah, she's been gone a long time.
Germans got her.
The Germans got her.
Yeah, the Germans got her.
She died of a peanut butter overdose.
Yeah,
I hope not.
Peanut butter in Germany got her.
Peanut butter in Germany.
Yeah.
Peanut butter. Yeah, I wonder where she went to.
I flipped that German girl over to eating peanut butter. She's like, oh yeah, peanut butter is good. And then all she did, she couldn't stop eating peanut butter. And then she had peanut butter everything. She was asking me what brands to get and everything. Because, let me tell you guys something. If you're from America, North America, when you think of peanut butter, there's a certain product that comes to your mind, a certain taste that comes to your mind. Europeans don't have that particular taste in mind when their peanut butter fucking sucks. Sucks ass. British peanut butter, if it's a British brand, sucked. So they don't like it. But if you say, no, get Peter Pan, get Skippy.
Or Jif.
And smooth or crunchy of any of those.
Crunchy. for the
Crunchy,
win.
good.
I'm
It depends on what you're gonna do.
I'm a
with it.
crunchy girl.
Right.
Smooth's good too.
Right.
I won't say no to that. They're both good, but I prefer crunchy.
And then they don't know what to do with it. You put that shit on toast. Butter both sides of the toast.
Yeah, put
And
butter
then put
peanut butter.
fucking grape, what we call jelly, but you guys call it preserves or jam. Some kind of jam. I like grape jam.
Strawberry's good too.
Strawberry's good too. On one piece of bread, and then the peanut butter on the other, and you put them together like that.
Or peanut butter and honey is also
Or-
very good.
Yeah, but it's okay. It doesn't have a fruit flavor to it though.
That's true.
I showed that German girl that, and she came back. She says, "Oh hell yeah," because that's what we're talking about.
See, that's why we like peanut
That's
butter
why America's
so
like.
much.
You see,
Because we have good peanut butter.
and our history, a history of our country, had Mars and had fucking Hershey's chocolate, and one of the first big candies, the number one candy, is a fucking Reese's peanut butter cup. Oh, and
Which is weird because that's
Yeah.
like some gritty ass peanut butter in there,
It's
but it
just good.
works.
It's just
It
good.
works with the whole gestalt.
I
of
was
it.
in Boston and went to fucking Harvard Square back in the 90s. It was the mid 90s, and they had a candy shop there making candy. And this is fucking, it'd rival anything in Europe. They're making their own chocolates and making their own candy bars. And they had peanut butter cups in there, about 6 different flavors of them, the size of a fucking apple. That's how big they were. They were like that big and about that fucking tall. And they were about $5 back in the 90s. And man, those things were good. And they had all different combinations, like peanut butter and jelly, grape jelly, in white chocolate. That was one of the ones that they had.
See, I'm a big fan
I was
of like
man,
white chocolate with peanut butter inside.
man.
That shit's delicious.
And then they
I mean,
had
I
the-
love white chocolate.
Then
anyway.
they had the regular milk chocolate with peanut butter, and then they had all the different variations and swirls and shit. White chocolate and milk chocolate swirled together with peanut butter in the middle, and it was huge, man. And you'd get 3/4 the way through it, and you're like, damn, I don't know if I can eat this anymore. This shit is getting so rich.
Yeah, I don't think I could eat a whole one.
I was like, and I was walking around trying to eat it, and I was thinking, man, I need some milk. You know? Milk would have helped. But I did eventually eat them. But the first fucking, going through that, eating half of it was like eating 4 Reese's Peanut Butter Cup packages. It was like eating that. So it was like eating 8 of them. It was the shit, man. I don't know if that candy shop's still there.
Zach says a few scoops of peanut butter goes great on mint chocolate chip ice cream.
Oh, yeah, it probably would.
You know what?
It's good on
I don't
all
think
ice cream.
I mean, I've had peanut butter on vanilla ice cream.
Yeah.
And that's delicious.
Yeah, it's good on
But
chocolate ice cream.
I don't think I've ever. Yeah, it's good on chocolate ice cream
Yeah.
too, but I don't think I've ever had it on mint chocolate chip.
Yeah.
That probably would be good, actually.
Yeah.
Because mint chocolate chip is actually one of my favorite flavors.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the show.
All right, good.
We're going to go down a sideways path of
Well,
fucking food and shit. Okay.
Well, yeah.
All right.
Whose
Show's
fault
done.
is that? Whose fault is that?
Yeah, peanut butter cups and ice cream. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, they do. It's good.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a reason that Dairy Queen sells those Blizzard things.
Yeah.
They have like the peanut butter cups
Yeah.
like in the
Peanut
ice
butter fudge.
cream.
Yeah.
I told you my mom used to make like
Damn.
fucking fantastic peanut butter fudge. We should probably make some.
Yeah. I can make some.
We probably have like a fuck ton of peanut butter
Yeah.
fudge in this house, or peanut butter in this house. I mean. So yeah. So well, like I said, the Navy website has a whole like dictionary, like all the terms and stuff they came up with, and all the words they came up with, like for all the letters and stuff like that. So it's really like interesting. So they did actually develop a code book. You weren't allowed to like take it any place, obviously, because if anybody found it, they would be fucked. But they had to, you know, they had to write it down at some point because they had to teach it to people. Because like I said, the original 29, the people that came up with the code, once they came up with it, they had to like write it all down so they could, you know, when new guys came in, they had to like show them how to do it before they were deployed. So there was that. So they never took it out in the field. They just like kept it in the classroom. Now, as I said, when they were out in the field, obviously they could not write anything down. They just had to memorize the message and then translate it and then put it over the radio. So no one could write anything down because nobody wanted anything to be found. Now, as I mentioned earlier, because they had all of this code shit and it wasn't just them translating an English message just directly into Navajo. They had all these other, like a layer or two on top of it. So even if someone that spoke Navajo heard the message, they wouldn't understand what it was saying, because it would just sound like gibberish or like a garbled, like it wouldn't make any sense to them. Like they might understand some of the words, but they wouldn't understand what the words signified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, they had like different terms to mean different like military things, and if you didn't know what that was, then you wouldn't know. They're like, why are they talking about leaves? I don't get it.
I'm gonna turn that fan on. Oh shit.
Oh. Well, you have to.
How this shit? Is it the center one?
Yeah. Well, I had to turn the light on the other day because I was making a video.
All right. Gotta get some fan action because I've been drinking and I'm starting to get hot under here. Today was an injection day. Took all my injections, so I'm like, oh,
You got all kind of problems.
yeah, I know. My manliness is fucking going fourfold right now.
Is it?
Oh, it is.
I don't know. It's not all that manly. You're always kind of like, oh, I've had the vapors or whatever it is you're doing.
Good. I just got to get behind it.
You'll be all right.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, it should be said too that a lot of the code talkers, they weren't just dudes that, you know, talked into the radio or the phone or whatever. They had to know how to like they carried all the equipment, obviously, which, like you said, was very heavy back in those days. They had to know how to operate like all the radio equipment and the, you know, the wire equipment. They had to carry it on their backs. They had to set it all up and like the electronic lines and everything like that.
They also had to know how to fight.
And a lot of them actually went into combat.
Yeah.
And there was a thing too, like especially when the Code Talker program was new and knowledge of their existence wasn't widespread. Like a lot of times they would show up at like some battle or whatever and they're just like, yeah, get out there, like in the front lines, or they would like employ them like doing messages and stuff like that because they didn't know that they were doing the code thing. You know what I mean? So a lot of them actually did see combat, like I said. So yeah, so that's what they would do. They would be given the message in English. They wouldn't write it down, translate it, and then they would send it to their team member, the other code talker, the other Navajo, and then they would write the message down in English, and then they put it in the logbook.
Yeah. Now let me go ahead and say something here. You know, most Navajo of this era weren't big guys either. Okay, you're talking between 5'3" to 5'7". 5'7" probably would have been a pretty big Navajo at that time. I've seen photographs of them. And some of the Native Americans that I served with, also the smaller guys. But it was weird. Sometimes they'll be small, and then you have some 6'1" dudes, you know. Fucking, not all Native Americans were the same size. They had good genetic diversity. Sergeant Zamora, he was much bigger than his dad from what I've seen in the videos of him talking to the feds over that damn UFO shit. Sergeant Zamora was probably 6'1". Big dude. He was kind of like Sonny from fucking Predator 1. He was like that. Yeah. Remember that dude, Sonny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. 88 said Tom is having hot flashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going through menopause?
No, it's all that fucking shit I'm fucking injecting.
Well, that's your own fault.
It's good, though. It feels good. It's all coming back. I'm going through my hormone therapy, people. Yeah, I'm going through the heavier part of my cycle.
Your menstrual cycle.
My menstrual cycle. My menstrual cycle.
Your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
We need to popularize that concept. Your menstrual
Trying to gain a few more pounds and lose some weight. Lose some fat around the waist and fucking gain a few more pounds. I want to gain about another 10 pounds upper body. But it's going to take time to do it safely. I've been fucking working out fucking hard, lifting heavy. I'm on the right shit, too. So we'll see. It's going to be good.
Sure.
Jenny knows I love it.
Yeah, you do.
I love it.
He's in, like I said, his gym is right next to my office, so I always hear him in there going, when I'm trying to work. I'm just like, oh, geez, here we go.
Feels so good. It's fun.
Yeah.
I need a workout partner.
Well, you better go find one then.
See, she don't want to work one. Okay, all right, go ahead.
No, I don't.
All right.
No, I don't. Told you that a million times. It's not fun for me.
Okay.
So yeah. So okay.
Give me a female workout partner. She'll be in there lickety split working out. You trying to push that girl out. How much you want to bet?
No, I won't. Okay.
You wouldn't?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna get me a female workout partner then.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna charge her too.
Yeah, big time.
I need to get it. I need a student.
Yeah, get some money.
I need a student.
Get some money.
Trying. These bitches don't want to work out.
Maybe they just don't want to work out with you.
Maybe that's what it is.
Has that ever occurred to you?
I don't know.
Zach says, well, it is called menopause, not Menno keep going. That was a pretty good one, Zach.
Who said that shit?
Zach.
Fucking Zach. Zach, he's big into manology. Manism. He's studying man.
Manology.
Manology. Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, this is hilarious. All right. So we were talking about the Battle of Iwo Jima earlier, which is a very, very famous battle. So on Iwo Jima, they actually had 6 Navajo code talkers, and they worked in shifts 24 hours a day. And they, pretty much during the first 2 days of the battle, they relayed like some very, very important messages. 800 messages, actually, during those 2 days. And those 800 messages had not a single mistake. And for that reason, because they conveyed all that information, like, during this battle, because we were talking earlier about how fucked up that battle was. It was like I said, it's on like a little bitty island, and the Japanese were there to like, we're gonna wipe out everybody or die in the effort, and so it was kind of like a shit show. But yeah, so the fact that they sent or received 800 messages without making a single mistake, basically one of the majors who was kind of in charge of the shit at the time, his quote was, were it not for the Navajos, the Marines would never have taken Iwo Jima, because they conveyed so much important information, and the codes were not cracked. So, again. But it wasn't all fun and games, like I said. It wasn't fun and games at all. There were times where some of the Navajo code talkers were mistaken for Japanese and were captured by other American soldiers.
Yeah, and they had to sort it out.
And can you imagine? At some point, it's like a couple of them, they said that, I guess, looked more Japanese or whatever. They had to give them bodyguards.
Yeah, to
protect them from the other Americans.
Yeah. Okay,
it's like, look, I'm an American. Please do not capture me.
Let me give some historical, cultural context, though, of this, okay? You're talking about a time before there was a global mass media. Japan was something these dudes had only maybe had seen in a National Geographic magazine. They didn't know what a Japanese person looked like. Not really. They probably weren't even sure what an Indian looked like, depending on where they came from.
No, probably not.
So,
unless you're from the Southwest.
Yeah, unless you're from the Southwest. So, to see a person who was non-white with black hair and light skin in that uniform, you might think that might be the Japanese. That's exactly what they would think. So it would take a while to straighten that out, but no. But yeah,
and some of them that didn't know about the Code Talker program also thought that when they heard them over the radio,
that they might have been Japanese talking,
because it sounded to them like a foreign language that they didn't understand. So it's like, Japanese. The Japanese must have taken over. So, they had some issues with that. So basically, what they did, so it works like a really good, it worked really good for a time, and then what they would have to do is they would go to like, meetings and stuff in Hawaii where they would kind of like codify the code book and make sure everybody was on the same page and all that kind of shit. And then they had to like train other code talkers so everybody like knew the same code words and shit like that. And honestly, using Navajo code talkers, they used it in the Korean War also, and it a little bit into the Vietnam War, although it was ended like kind of early in that conflict. But they used it in other wars other than like World War I and World War II. They did actually use it later on, but like I said, as technology kind of progressed, and they probably didn't need it as much, and maybe people were like more familiar with it too. Although I have to say that, interestingly, it wasn't really widely known by society as a whole. This program was actually not known at all until like the late 1960s. So basically, like when I was watching the documentary, like some of the code talkers that had been like of the original 29 that were still alive, they came out and said, yeah, well, we came back and they didn't really even get any accolades or any kind of like promotions or nothing. It's just kind of, everybody was like, well, thanks, you did a good job. It's like, you saved our butts and everything like that. But it's like, they didn't really get much of anything out of it. And it's like nobody even knew that they had done that until like the late 1960s. Because the thing about it was that they kind of wanted to keep it a secret in case they wanted to use it again. So they didn't want it to become wide knowledge. It's like, oh, we're using like, you know, Navajo, or we're using whatever like Native American language to encode messages. They didn't want really that being common knowledge, like, you know, the military. So they were kind of like, I don't know if they told the code talkers, hey, don't tell anybody about it, but they were kind of like, well, we were kind of encouraged like not to talk too much about it just in case they wanted to use that shit again. So, you know, they felt like they shouldn't really like talk about it too widely. So as I mentioned earlier, the Navajo code, the one they came up with for the original 29, only spoken military code, never to be deciphered by the enemy. Never. That's the only one that was never deciphered. I have to say, too, just as an aside, also in World War II, the Canadian Armed Forces also employed, like, First Nation soldiers who spoke the Cree language as code talkers. Now, they also didn't really get any recognition either. Because the shit was classified until, I believe, 1963. And so they were not acknowledged. So the code talkers didn't get any recognition until 1968. Their operation was declassified in that year. It wasn't, however, until 1982 when the code talkers were actually given a certificate of recognition by Ronald Reagan. And they had a Navajo Code Talkers Day, which was August 14th, 1982. So that was kind of like some big to-do. Then in December of 2000, Bill Clinton signed a law which awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to the original 29, like the guys that had come up with the original code. And they also so those guys got gold medals, and then they got silver medals, like if you were a part of the Code Talker program. But the original 29 that had come up with the code got gold medals. So they got those. And, but like I said, the last of the original 29... who developed the code died in 2014.
Let me go ahead and say something else, though.
Well, there's one more sentence.
Okay,
Let me say one more sentence.
Right.
I didn't know this, but there's actually a Code Talkers monument in Ocala, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Which is where my mom lives. And it's only like an hour from here. Which I didn't even know that. But yeah, there's a Ocala, Florida Memorial Park, and there is a Code Talkers monument right there with all their names on it, which I thought was like kind of cool.
Now the Code Talker thing was secret, but there was a lot of other secret shit that involved Native Americans and other people. All right. Because the Native American angle and secrecy kind of went hand in hand, okay, for a while. A lot of people don't know this, but this is something that I gleaned from reading other things from other books later on. You had Native Americans also in the skunk works, Lockheed Martin skunk works, which is they were doing all the top secret shit out there in Groom Lake, like the SR-71 and atomic bomb programs and all this shit. Guys that kind of have a tribal background weren't in the mainstream of society. And they were honorable. They could keep their fucking mouths shut. And a lot of those programs that was happening inside Lockheed Martin, the Skunk Works, and all that Area 51 type shit was cash jobs. So they were contractors, and they were paid in cash. That way there was no fucking paper trail. You know what I mean? And all this stuff is getting paid out of black budgets. And what they did is they helped run ranges and maintain buildings and drivers and people that would fucking work and on those camps, and they kept their fucking mouths shut. Not only them, but ex fucking Italian gangsters and criminals and shit working out there on those weird clandestine CIA funded programs. So that's just kind of on the sideline. You know, this isn't the only thing Native Americans were doing. They did a lot of fucking weird shit.
Well, like I said, a lot of them served in the military.
Yeah,
so
served in the military and
into all kinds of stuff.
They were of the right profile that where you could work with them and word would never get out.
Strawdog 78 said there was one Native American dude, a wireman, in my artillery battery, super quiet and could lift all the heavy equipment like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Mr. 88 said Reagan gave the Code Talkers recognition to atone for his awful B-Westerns.
Yeah, B-Westerns fucking sucked.
Probably so. I'm so maybe he felt bad. I don't really.
That's
know,
a debt we owe to the Italians though, because the Italians showed us how to make Western movies. Fucking Sergio Leone and fucking some of the spaghetti westerns were so good that we had to fucking revamp the fucking.
Which is hilarious that it took like Italians to be like, look, you can't even make fucking movies about your own goddamn country here.
Yeah, here. This is what it.
And we're like, oh,
Right.
yeah, you're right. That
And
is
Clint
better.
Eastwood, who was in some of the fucking best fucking spaghetti westerns, started his own production company, and a lot of the great westerns fucking were Clint, you know, like fucking Outlaw Josie Wales and fucking Pale Rider and fucking Unforgiven and shit, man, fucking High Plains Drifter. Those are actually copies of Italian movies. That's Italian spaghetti western.
Which is hilarious to me because I kind of feel like for a long time it felt like, well, a lot of people perceived that like a lot of Italian entertainment was just like ripping off American movies,
Not
which they
Sergio.
do.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that, well, particularly with westerns and particularly in horror movies, because like I said, the slasher movies are essentially like a ripoff of Italian giallo movies.
Yeah.
So, which, I mean, to be fair, could be constituted as like a ripoff of like Alfred Hitchcock movies, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know. It's more like a back and forth. Yes, the Italians did make a lot of shitty knockoffs of, you know, like when Jaws came out, they made like The Last Shark and shit like that. That was obviously like Jaws, but much shittier. But yeah, they did that, but they also did like a lot of really good shit too. So
Fucking what Sergio did, Sergio showed Americans that they showed us that the Western is one, it is gothic. Two, it is post-apocalyptic. And three, it is important. And that's what fucking Sergio gave. That was the angle he came at. What made the Western movie so important and what made the Western story important was that fucking soundtrack. Go listen to fucking the soundtrack to Good and Bad and the Ugly, or any Sergio Leone movies, and Sergio Leone westerns, and the movies just sound fucking important. They just sound epic as fuck.
well, Italy has a
Just
long
epic.
tradition of like opera
Yeah.
and drama and things
Yeah.
like that. So they know like heightened
They knew
emotions,
how to do
man.
that, right?
They're into that shit.
And all those fucking crosses and fucking burnt down buildings, and this is a Mad Max western, you know. And that's how frontier kind of was in a certain way. A town would spring up and then be destroyed. And even in the 1800s, when there were fucking outlaws and shit going on, it was still kind of post-apocalyptic because there was stuff going on there in the 1700s that was still ruins. You know what I mean? So, and you're kind of in a gray area legally, you know. It's kind of like being on the high seas in the age of piracy. It's like that, but it's on land. So Sergio Leone, he knew how to tell that story.
One of these days, I still want to do a Florida Pirates show.
Yeah.
When I was in St. Augustine, I bought the book Under the Black Flag, which I still haven't read yet, which is all about pirates. But yeah, Florida has a long tradition of like pirate shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really like all
The
that.
South is steeped in culture, and it's just so many different cultures were here.
Florida is very piratey. Well, especially like Tampa.
Yeah.
Like Tampa area is all fucking piratey.
Yeah.
There was all kind of like pirate shit going on over there. There's like pirate wrecks. There's all kind of stuff. They even have like a fucking festival every year called Gasparilla, which is all like it's like Mardi Gras but piratey.
Yeah, it's the South is Indian, it's Mexican, it's Irish, it's African, especially if you're talking about New Orleans, it's French, and it's Spanish. All happening in the same place. It's like some shit out of fucking Pirates of the Caribbean or the Caribbean, and it's like something out of a damn. It's just, and the South has a real good story, good heritage behind it, and it is kind of what me and Jenny, because it is gothic. It has a gothic flavor to it. You know, even Anne Rice knew that. You know, Spanish.
Well,
moss
that's why
and
there's a
pirates.
whole a whole Southern Gothic subgenre.
Right.
Then there has been for a very long time.
Yeah.
Which has a very
It's
specific,
all here.
set of tropes.
Yeah.
Camp Guy said they're still digging up Spanish treasure ships in Florida. I love treasure stuff. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you should seriously go to Tampa or go to St. Augustine, because St. Augustine is Spanish stuff, Native American stuff, and pirate stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty much like all it is. There's a pirate museum there, which is small, but it's like it's pretty fucking epic. They have like all kind of stuff like that they've dug up from, you know, from wrecks like right there, like right in the Atlantic Ocean, which is St. Augustine is on the Atlantic Ocean, in case you didn't know. But all the stuff that they've found like right there, so it's like it's really, really cool. But yeah, it's just it's super, super fun. But yeah, if you're into that kind of stuff, like come to Florida. There's I don't know, we talk about this a lot. Florida is the South, but
it's kind of
like an amalgam.
It's a different blend of the South
of lots of different things.
It's the South and Central America at the same time. It's the South and Nicaragua or Cuba. Well, Cuba really isn't so much the South. Cuba is more like Spain, you know. It's just a mixture of a bunch of stuff, and it's been here for centuries. And outsiders don't know this culture, you know. That's why back when me and Sly were boys, back in the 70s and the 80s, the South had its own movies, you know. It released its own movies. You know, a lot of it was fucking, you know, shit like Malone.
Most of them had Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds in them and shit like that. You know, Burt Reynolds had his own. You had movies that were released just for the South, and it is its own culture.
But even that, I mean, I grew up here, and the thing about it is that Florida has a lot of that. Like, it has a lot of the very southern, like what people call like rednecky kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's like, it depends on where you go, though.
Yeah, it's not everything.
That's like that's like the Panhandle. That's like some parts of Central Florida, but
Tennessee, Mississippi.
Not everywhere is like that.
Not everywhere is like that. Like there are African parts of Mississippi that are almost kind of like Haiti. Same thing with Louisiana, you know, around the port areas, kind of like Haiti. And then you have Spanish areas.
There's a lot of Spanish influence
in
in Florida as well, obviously.
Yeah.
Because
and you know, I have Spanish and French names, you know, in my family. My grandfather's name was Bolivar. His name was Bolivar Ross. My middle name is Francis. Yeah, fucking ass name like that. Fucking Zach, man. Am I gay for having that middle name, Zach? You tell me.
He doesn't tell a lot of people.
My middle name
you
is
just
Francis,
told everybody his middle name is Francis.
There's French names and there's Spanish names, you know, in my family. And it's just because it was the French, the Spanish, the Irish, and Africans, and Mexicans and Indians, all in the same area, depending on where you were. Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like all of this kind of, but like I said,
and it was across the board. You had desert over in the fucking, over in like the California, New Mexico, Utah area, and Arizona. It's all desert, and then it starts going into Texas, which is part desert, part grassland, and then you start going tropical, and tropical France, like something out of damn Vietnam. When you start getting into Louisiana and Mississippi, it's like the Mekong Delta. It's also in Alabama and the Panhandle, and then you start going into Florida. It's more like Honduras, Nicaragua, El Salvador. You know, it's like that.
It's a swamp.
It's a swamp.
I mean, and the thing about it is that, and I think we brought this up before, like Central and South Florida used to be a swamp.
Yeah.
Before Disney came and before and they started building on it and like people started moving down here because like the weather was nice or like warmer, I guess. So people started moving down here, God knows why. But yeah, so they built over the swamp. Yeah. South Florida is still a swamp largely, other than like Miami and the shit on the coasts. The middle part of South Florida, that's all swamp.
Right. And here's something else, you know, the south part of Mississippi, south part of Florida is Central America, basically, genetically, and just it's the top, and the weather. It's like Nicaragua, and in the '80s it was a full-on fucking drug cartel war there, and it was not a joke, no joke at all. You got people from New York moving down there, and they like it, but it's culture shock. That is nothing like New York, nothing.
But the thing about it now is that
totally different,
and especially nowadays, because I kind of feel like, and even when I was young, and I was born in Florida, I was born in Daytona Beach, Even back then it was starting to change. You had a lot of like still like Southern Cracker type shit, and like you had all the swamp people and all that kind of stuff, but there was still loads and loads of people that had moved from up north or had vacation homes down here. There were snowbirds because of the weather. They would come down here in the winter, but I kind of feel like that's accelerated. It's the thing about it, even when I was in high school, I was one of only 2 people that I knew in my whole high school that had been born in Florida. My best friend was born in Gainesville. Yeah. And everyone else was born someplace else.
Yeah. A lot of them in other places in the South, though.
Not necessarily. A lot of them were New Yorkers. A lot of people from Illinois, Ohio. For whatever reason, I knew a lot of people that were from there.
Well, I've lived all over this place, and I can look at the demographics, and I can look at how the culture's going and politics. They move here, and they are not changing this place. This place is changing them. The people that I meet in Florida on a daily basis are only the kind of people you would meet in Florida. They're not. Yeah, some of them do have influences from up north, but this is still the South. I mean, I fucking lived in the North. I lived in Boston, the northest of the North. I was there for 5 years and enjoyed it. But that and also up in the Michigan area for I think 2 years. Part of that 1 year that was in Detroit, and which is that's where my Axel Foley fucking man crush came from. But there's nothing. This place is nothing like the North. Nothing.
This place is nothing like it's anywhere.
It's its own thing.
Because, well, and the thing about it, like I said, you don't really have, and I think even less so than when I was a kid, you don't have a lot of people that were born here anymore. Yeah. Most people come here from other places. To me, it's kind of so it's like an amalgam of like every.
To me, it's kind of like an urban, more sophisticated South. There's a difference between Mississippi, deep Mississippi South, and say Florida South. There's a big difference there. Yeah. So when I say South, I'm talking about South in general. It's not the same in Mississippi. You come back to Heidelberg with me. Oh, no, it's a whole different fucking planet, okay? Different fucking planet. There is shit that people will do in an urban environment here in say, Orlando that would never fly in deep Mississippi.
Yeah. I mean, Orlando is pretty... Yeah. I don't want to say it's like super cosmopolitan because
it's just more sophisticated.
It's not in terms of like bigger cities, but, I mean, it's... a bigger city.
I've been to
in Florida.
I've been to the biggest fucking cities in the fucking world. One of them was fucking Sao Paulo, Brazil. I partially grew up there, and this is nothing like that. Even though I love Brazil, I like Brazil. I like Sao Paulo much better than Boston or New York. It's a lot more free and open. Even though that's like Mad Max world. I fucking love the third world. You guys are calling it the third world. My friends call it the third world. Most of the girls I grew up with in Brazil live here in Florida now. Okay, because they just evacuate all the pretty girls out of Brazil to get them up here to the United States, and they're all living here. This is a South America South flavor. It just is. I've been to South America. I've been in Brazil. It is like Central or South America.
It is. It does have that. Yeah. It does have a very strong flavor of that.
It is, and half of it is like Central or South America. The other half of it is kind of like the South, like with mud trucks, Harleys, guns,
NASCAR.
It's a mixture of that, and they're interbreeding. So there isn't a conflict between the two cultures. They just like, yeah, okay, whatever. They don't care. They're all having a good time. And like the biker bar that I go to all the time, if you look at those people, they're fucking half of them are Latino, but they've just been here for generations. I just like the place. It's fun. It's got a future. I like how it goes. It reminds me a lot of when I was a kid. It reminds me of the way San Diego and Vista, California were back in the 70s. It felt kind of like this, which was a good place, fun. Get a lot for your money. Outside of a city, but you have access to a city. Drive 30 minutes down these new toll roads and me and Jenny be downtown. Having a good time.
Linwood Sly says, visited Orlando back in the 90s, brought a surfboard, but never went surfing. Well, you can't surf in Orlando.
Can't surf in Orlando.
It's in the central part. Did you not know that, like, the ocean is, like, an hour and a half away?
Yeah.
Depending on where you are in Orlando. Like I said, I was born in Daytona Beach, which is right on the ocean.
Yeah.
So
is surfing good in Daytona? Probably not, huh?
Not really.
No.
I mean, people do surf there.
Yeah.
Like, I have uncles and cousins and stuff like that are super into it. But to be honest with you,
California.
okay, I'm going to say there's a reason why every time a hurricane is coming, all the surfers get excited.
Yeah.
And they go out
Get
there to
some
the
waves.
beach, against all advisements.
Yeah.
They're like, fuck it, we're going to go out there and
Yeah.
get some... Because Daytona, like, the beach is not... Unless it's really windy, the waves are pretty small, gonna say. It's not great surfing. You can surf, but... It's not like California or Australia or some, like, great surfing place. Like, it's possible, but I don't know. I used to go to the beach a lot as a kid, not because I necessarily wanted to, but because my mom was really into it. Because I'm not really a beach person. But, yeah, the surfing's not fantastic. But you totally cannot surf in Orlando. We got lots of lakes in Orlando, but if you want to go to the ocean, you got to drive at least an hour, like, to the east or to the west. I'm going to say... If you just want a beach, like a beautiful beach, generally, the west coast of Florida, Tampa, Clearwater, the beaches are nicer looking. But that's the Gulf of Mexico, so I don't really know. I don't think the surfing is much better over there. Yeah. Daytona, St. Augustine, shit like that's the Atlantic Ocean. You're probably better off surfing over there, but still not great surfing. I do know people that surf there, but it's not fantastic.
Sly said Clint Eastwood's Western soundtracks I studied in college in Indian Hills Community College in Iowa, 1978. Yeah, you're talking about the ones with Sergio Leone. He directed them. Real good. Today's 20s and 30s never seen a good Western. That's right. Yeah, young people have never seen a good Western movie probably. Well,
there have been some good ones like here and there. It's just not really like a big genre.
Well,
like
what they did was that they played that fucking some Western video games. They're supposed to be really good. Like, what is it, Red
Dead Redemption?
Yeah, everybody says it's great. I've never played it, but one of the guys I subscribe to, who's big into movies and entertainment, says that now is the time for some badass westerns, and yeah. A couple of some badass westerns probably would be really good.
I mean, I feel like some people have been, like, Ty West made one, like, back in 2016. Like, some people have been making them. Yeah. It's just, it's not, like, ubiquitous like it used to be. You know what I mean? Like, where there was all kind of westerns. But I have seen some good ones, like, in the last few years, so they're still around. Yeah. Let me see.
Sly says Tom Reynolds was comical and honest in his TV. No, yeah, fucking... Reynolds was good dude. He's a good dude. I really recommend. For a while they were showing it for free. What was it, Gator?
Yeah.
And what was the second part of Gator? It was Gator. No, the first
White
one.
Lightning.
No, the first one was White Lightning, and then the second one was Gator.
The second one was Gator.
Those are some old.
Because that was his name.
Yeah. Fucking Gator was his name. Go see White Lightning and Gator. Those are some white exploitation movies, man, from the South. Crackersploitation. It was kind of like on a.
That's what I call it.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like Petey Wheatstraw of the fucking. What was his name?
Rudy Ray Moore.
Yeah, Rudy Ray Moore. They were kind of like Rudy. They were higher budgets than Rudy Ray Moore. And, Rudy wasn't working with a whole lot. It was just most people volunteering. I like his movies. Jenny almost bought me the whole collection of Rudy Ray Moore.
We were in FYE, and they had the whole Rudy Ray Moore, like all of his movies in one box. It was like $100, though. I
get that shit online for cheaper than that. But
you can. But some of them are on Tubi, like Petey Wheatstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, and shit like that. Yeah. That's all on Tubi.
Yeah, and fucking he inspired Eddie, from Eddie Murphy. But no, go check out fucking White Lightning and Gator.
Yeah, we were
playing them for free. Those movies were actually mostly made for Tennessee. They said that just opening night in Nashville, they'd break even. Everything else was great.
Because everybody goes.
They were just made just for the South, and they were good movies. They were like Southern gangster, action adventure, ex-con. He's kind of like the fucking Southern James Bond, because there's never going to be a James Bond for the South. The only way you're going to be James Bond of the South is to be an ex-con. And of course, fucking he's an ex-con, They're just good movies.
Camp Guy says, Kelly Slater, world
Yeah.
champion surfer, 15 years plus from Cocoa Beach, Florida. Cocoa Beach is about an hour south of where I grew up.
Yeah.
Maybe the surfing's better down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay in Daytona. I'm not saying that. But like I said, there is a reason why when a hurricane's coming, all the surfers get excited and run out there because it's like better than usual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though like all the people are like, get off the beach, you're going to get fucking...
Jay Sly said Bone Tomahawk was good. All right, Sly, I'm going to break it to you right here on the show. My friend made that movie, Brian Hackett, and he's in the comment section.
Every now and then he turns up.
Yeah,
in
we
the
went to
comment.
military school together out in California for a while. But he did the sound for that movie. He also did the sound for the movie fucking VFW, which is another fucking good movie.
Man, VFW was good.
Yeah.
Not a
And-
Western, but...
Not a Western.
It was a horror movie. Kind of. Like a
Yeah.
survival horror, I guess.
Yeah.
You would call it. But yeah, that was good. What was the most
Where
recent...
is Brian?
I don't know. He shows up in here every now and
Yeah.
then.
Okay.
What was the most recent great Western? The last Western I can think of at all was The Hateful Eight. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Ty West, who usually makes horror movies, obviously, he made House of the Devil and X and stuff like that. He made one, but that was back in 2016. I can't remember the name of it. I'm trying to think. What was that one? This might have been like earlier than The Hateful Eight, though. What was that one? The Proposition that like Nick Cave wrote the screenplay. That one was pretty awesome.
Yeah, Straw Dogs. Brian also did Terror on the Prairie. I haven't seen it yet, though.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet.
He said he's going to send me a free code to watch it on release date.
Yeah, we'll see it.
That has my girl on it, man. Oh, what's her name? Fucking, that girl was cute, man. An MMA fighter. What's her name?
Gina Carano.
Gina Carano, yeah. She was cute.
How come I remember stuff when I'm drunk?
Because,
and
no,
you
I'm
don't?
drunk and I had those head
I'm drunk,
injuries.
too.
I got to go. Look, okay. Do you want me to make you another drink?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
Linwood says, I've seen them, Tom. White Lightning and even his last two movies.
Yeah, what'd you think of White Lightning?
Wait, you gonna stand there and
I'm going
wait?
to stand there until he gets
Linwood Sly said, I loved Hateful Eight. Yeah, Hateful Eight was actually really good. Even saw Elvis movies because he inspired me to talk with hot women. I love the Elvis movies. You know, he wasn't like a fantastic actor, but he was just like so charismatic. So are you guys like, I kind of want to see, I don't know if you guys know, but Baz Luhrmann made an Elvis movie, which I think is coming out in a week or two. And I kind of want to see it. It looks kind of awesome. I mean, you know, I like Moulin Rouge. He made that Romeo and Juliet movie that Tom loves, so we'll probably go see that Elvis thing. Last Western I can think of that made a mark was Unforgiven. Yeah, that was actually really good too. There have been some like here and there, but I kind of feel like they haven't. I don't know. I was gonna say No Country for Old Men, but that's not technically a Western, is it? That's kind of. I mean, it's sort of like a Western, but. There Will Be Blood. Oh yeah, that was a good one. I saw that in the theater actually. That was kind of like a Western. Yeah, that was good. I only saw it once though. I wouldn't mind like rewatching it. I saw that in the theater. I'm not like real big into Westerns. Like like I said, I'm not averse to pretty much any film genre. If it's good, I'll watch it. I don't give a shit what it is. But there are some, obviously, like, I'm a horror person, so it's like I'm always going to see those first, and the other ones I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'll see it if everybody says it's good, but I don't usually seek them out. So Westerns, I don't usually, like, seek them out until everybody says, oh my god, this is the best thing ever, you have to see it. Then, yeah, and Tammy brings up Bone Tomahawk, yeah. I mean, Bone Tomahawk was epic. And it was largely a Western. I mean, toward the end, it was, went into horror movie territory, but yeah. Linwood Sly says, I hope the Elvis movie is good. It's just a commercial. Yeah, I mean, I saw the trailer, and I don't know, it looks cool. And like I said, I like Baz Luhrmann's other movies. I love Moulin Rouge. So if it's like that, then I'll be into it probably. And I like Elvis, so I don't see how it could be that bad, right? I was talking about that new Elvis movie that's coming out.
Yeah. When is that coming out?
It should be. We saw the poster for it. Where's my drink at?
Oh shit! I left it on. I had to go to the restroom.
Oh. I thought you just made the drink and just like left it sitting there. Oh my god. Tom, you need to get your shit together. Get your shit together.
Yeah, we also got to see. Top Gun.
Yeah, we still got to see Top
and
Gun. I wanted to see. God, there's kind of a lot of stuff.
Top Gun and Elvis. Got to see them both.
I want to see Top Gun. I want to see Elvis.
We'll go see those tomorrow. Because we're not working tomorrow.
That's true.
We'll go see it tomorrow.
I wanted to see Men, that new A24 movie, and whenever the new Jordan Peele comes out, which is called Nope.
Nope.
But I think that looks fucking good. But I don't think that comes out until the end of the month.
Hold on, let me get put mice in this.
And I also want to see Black Phone. I think that starts next week too, like end of June. That's the new Blumhouse with Ethan Hawke in it. That looks good. So it sucks, man. It's like we moved out here and the movie theater by our old house is still the closest one to this. So now, huh?
We're done with code talkers?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Making sure. So the main
Yeah, I covered everything.
okay, main thing's covered.
So I'm saying that out loud now, so I don't like wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh shit, I forgot.
We
to, like,
got
say
the
this.
damn cookie butter.
I know.
I need to put this on some toast so we can finish that up, but that's just gonna sit there. What are you putting in there? Cookies?
I'm not putting anything in there.
Okay.
So every now and then I'll put a spoon in there and like just
Okay.
eat some off a spoon.
All right, we're gonna make a sandwich with that.
Zachary says
Jenny,
What?
Sly said, Jenny, my dad's like Tom's dad grew up with
Westerns.
Westerns, I guess. All right.
Yeah, my grandpa did.
Yeah.
My dad seemed like he wasn't really all that into movies.
So Sly,
He was more a music guy.
Sly's wanting to see Elvis too. Look, man,
It looks good.
that's my people. Okay, his family's just from Tupelo, just a little bit, maybe like
Tupelo.
90 miles from where my family's from.
That's a Nick Cave song.
Yeah.
It's called Tupelo. It's
There's
about
nothing in
Elvis being born.
Yeah,
and
nothing in
his
Tupelo.
twin dying.
And he moved over to the Nashville area after that. But no,
I'm
man.
fascinated by Elvis, actually.
Sly, if you want to see a good Elvis movie, see Elvis and Nixon.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good movie. That was about Elvis's secret mission to talk his way into the White House to go see the fucking president, Nixon,
And eat all his M&Ms.
to eat his M&Ms and to become a fucking undercover special narcotics agent.
Sure.
This shit is fucking hilarious.
He wanted a badge.
Yeah. We don't know what he wanted. We don't know what he wanted. But that movie right there, it was checked out. It was checked out by Elvis's friends who were there at the time, and they said, yeah, that's what they were, the advisors. So that is canon. That movie is canon. All right, in Elvis lore, and it's one of the best Elvis movies because it's just fucking hilarious. The dude that plays Elvis doesn't look like him. But he does.
Well, that's the one with Michael Shannon, right?
Yeah, Michael Shannon. He doesn't
I
really
love
look like
Michael
Elvis,
Shannon.
but he does a great job as spiritually. He becomes
He's
Elvis.
channeling
He channels Elvis,
his kind of energy.
and evidently that was as fucking crazy as Elvis was. Elvis is always kind of like portrayed as being kind of serious or something in a way, like he's stuffier. Elvis was funny. Elvis was on a lot of drugs too. Fucking at that period of his life, although he didn't consider them drugs because a doctor prescribed them to him.
Yeah, it doesn't,
got caught up.
It doesn't count then.
Yeah, it doesn't count. He got caught up in the same shit as Prince and Michael Jackson, where you got these quack doctors that give you drugs that and fucking you're convincing yourself that you're sick. Oh, you're not taking my medicine. But I got Elvis figured out. I know what happened to him. He hurt his leg when he was a little bit older. And they put him on some painkillers. And that's testosterone suppressive. And then he hit andropause, or male menopause, and he started to feel like shit. And the symptoms he was describing, he says, I don't feel right in my joints and this and that. And I just don't. He's talking about low testosterone. Instead of just bumping him up with some fucking test or fucking giving him some fucking anabolics to fucking pump him back up, they gave him more fucking painkillers, which makes it even worse. So low T killed
I kind of
Elvis.
feel like that happened a lot. Like, but
They didn't know what they were doing back
Well,
then.
I feel like that happens even
Yeah.
nowadays, like
Yeah.
to a lesser extent, because people are like know more about what's going on. But
the endocrine
a lot
system.
of people that were in accidents or something like that, and they're like, they have to have painkillers for a while, so they're not like screaming in pain the whole time. But sometimes they get addicted to them, and the doctors just like keep prescribing them, and then like you kind of like fall into this fucking downward spiral.
A young man can take painkillers and then come off of them and recover hormonally, because a young man produces a lot of testosterone. But a guy who's middle-aged can never really come off of painkillers and still feel right, because painkillers suppresses your endocrine system, so you'll be low T. A good endocrinologist, or a good doctor, will say, okay, now that he's coming off that, let's go ahead and fucking put him on HRT and get his fucking testosterone levels back up, and he'll feel a lot better, and he'll be able to heal up, and it will keep some fucking fat off of him, and he'll have the energy he needs to fucking work out and fucking continue his show. Poor Elvis, man, all he needed was HRT. Put him on HRT, Elvis would have gone on to his fucking 70s. And he'd have fucking beat Mick Jagger. I don't know what's keeping Mick Jagger fucking active. That motherfucker's a damn vampire. He just runs on heroin, I guess. I don't fucking know. I don't fucking know.
Somebody said for that, bitch is still alive, so it's like you can't like fucking fault him for that, right?
He doesn't have an endocrine system because he hasn't gained any weight. Last time I saw him, he was still skinny as fuck.
Well, he's
And
still
still
on the same
doing his
shit as like
fucking-
Iggy Pop and all that kind of stuff.
He's
They're
got,
like old as shit, and they've done all the drugs,
yeah, and he's got like a
and
fucking
they're still skinny, and they're still
22-year-old girlfriend and
old,
and 30 children
and
and
they're
shit.
still alive.
Fucking, I don't understand it, man. Motherfucker's a god.
Yeah,
You know?
it happens.
Yeah,
So you know,
but
you can't. Well, everybody's different.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? You
I think
can't just like prescribe
genetics.
the same shit for. Yeah, some people
Genetics.
just have like kick-ass genetics, I guess.
yeah. I would have taken Elvis. Elvis had good genetics for fucking masculine beauty and voice and singing, and his intelligence was good. I just would have kept that bitch bumped up on that testosterone, and something like Winstrol and Deanna Ball cycles of that, and I could have kept. Elvis would still be alive today, and probably still be doing good.
Well, I don't know about that. He'd probably be dead by now, wouldn't he?
No, he was younger than he was old. He was younger than. No, he's the same age as Mick Jagger.
Yeah, I guess.
He was the same.
When
I
did he
think-
die? In 1977, right?
Yeah, but he was still
1977.
young. I think he just turned 40, wasn't he?
No, I thought he was older than that, wasn't he?
No, 40 something. He was young.
1977.
I think he was at 40.
I can't remember. I thought he was older than that.
You
Camp
guys
Guy
can
says,
drop in the section. I think drop it in the comment section.
I mean,
think
I
he was-
remember he died
I think
in
he was like
1977,
41,
but I
42.
can't remember how old he was.
He wasn't old. He wasn't old. He was a young man. But no, from his description of his symptoms, it was low testosterone. He hit andropause and didn't know what it was. Women can hit fucking menopause, and men hit andropause. And
Camp Guy brings up Frost Nixon, which if you haven't seen that, that's also really good. I saw that in the theater.
Yeah.
I don't think you've seen it, but yeah, it was really good. Mr. 88 said Elvis was very scared of the Beatles, went about it rather weaselly. Yeah, he did seem to be very bothered by. Might have been some play hate, because I feel like the Beatles, that was kind of like the new thing that was coming in. And they kind of addressed that a little bit in Elvis and Nixon, where the Beatles were coming in, like the British invasion was happening, like this is like the new thing, and Elvis I kind of feel like he felt like, oh, well, I'm like the old guard, or I'm...
Yeah.
So he was kind of like trying to, these hippies, and they're coming in and all these drugs and everything like that. But the thing about it was that he was on drugs too, but he didn't really see it like that, you know.
He thought psychedelics were drugs. Anything else was medication.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
Right.
even though there's really not that much difference
Yeah,
between
but
these things,
his thinking
obviously.
wasn't like that. He was a fucking old school thinker. Elvis had not caught up to how rock evolved. He saw stuff like the Beatles and Rolling Stones. To him, that was like a foreign invasion from England, and that was acid rock. That was like drug music.
Yeah.
You know, and that it wasn't any good. Elvis started to go more towards his roots, which was Southern gospel.
Gospel, yeah.
Because he came up singing for black churches, all right, in the Southern Baptist tradition. So he started to go Actually, more black. His sound was more black, but it was a retro black, not the new coming black sound, which was more like James Brown. Well, no, that was already the past.
Like it was
because he was friends with James Brown. James Brown
like funk, and then it started going into disco. It would eventually become like disco. More like a disco kind of sound later.
There's a lot of misconceptions about who Elvis was and what his relationship with black people was. Elvis loved black people. He came up around black people. He was a southern sharecropper who lived right next door to them and was big friends with James Brown. He had James Brown was over at Graceland several times, and when fucking Elvis died, fucking James Brown fucking lost it. He couldn't believe that he died. And fucking Elvis loved James Brown. The whole thing about Elvis being a racist, that came from fucking Chuck D and fucking and Public Enemy, which I'm a huge Public Enemy fan. I really like Public Enemy, but Chuck D came out and says, "No, I just made that lyric up." Elvis wasn't racist. They were fucking attacking him because he wasn't racist during the segregational South. You know,
I don't think it was.
He was acting like he was black.
I don't think it was that. I think, like, in hindsight, it was easy to say, well, he took all of this quote unquote black music and made it palatable for white people, and I can see how there could be like a lot of resentment there. So I get that. But I don't. Elvis himself was not racist.
No, it was the same thing as Eminem did. Eminem took black music and he goes, "Oh yeah," and he put his own spin on it, and white people started listening to it. But I know a lot of black dudes fucking back through the days that fucking were just huge into Eminem. I was like, "You think Eminem's the best rapper?" Because yeah, Eminem's the best one. It just depends on
Well,
music is art.
Like I said.
It just depends on your taste.
It's all subjective.
So Elvis was kind of like Eminem in that way.
It's kind of like, this is sort of analogous, like probably not as politically charged, but I don't like Marilyn Manson for the fact that he took
goth music
it was more like goth industrial,
right? Yeah,
and mainstreamed it. Right. So I'm like, oh goody, now a bunch of chodes listen to this shit.
That's a good analogy.
So it's kind of like the same kind of thing, right? So I get it. I feel resentment. Like I still can't. And I agree that Marilyn Manson made some okay shit. I've never bought any of his stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm always gonna be mad because it's like you took some shit that was good and now a bunch of assholes listen to it and I can't like it anymore.
Here's another angle people need to look at. Being from a southern family in Mississippi.
All right, I got pee.
Okay, good. When you look at Elvis singing very early rock and roll in the 50s, you had people saying, well, that's black music. Well, not really. It was also just southern music. It was Mississippi Delta music. Because in the Mississippi Delta, you had blues like Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and the early Mississippi Delta blues players. And that's what Elvis was being, that's what his main influence was. So it wasn't, it had a racial aspect or an ethnic aspect to that sound, but it was also regional. It was just the region in which Elvis was growing up in. And he's hearing that, and he's learning from those guys, and he starts to adopt that sound because that was the regional sound, and that's what he liked. Now, everybody will tell you from that era, the black artists from Elvis's era will tell you that what Elvis really had was the look. Okay, he had a super marketable look. He was very handsome. And he was the right age, and it was the right place at the right time and the right fucking technology. You could go to a little place and have a single cut on an album, and you could have that played at a local radio station, and then everybody would hear it. So there was an element of luck to Elvis. Okay? And that's just the way it was. But that's okay, because all of history is like that. All of history is like that. It's the right man, the right place, the right time. Okay?
Well, you hear a lot too, like sometimes this happened in hindsight, like some motherfucker comes out, like for, I'm not talking about Elvis specifically, but somebody like that, like comes out and he has the right look, the right sound, and it just happens to happen at the right time and he gets like super popular.
Right.
But then like later on you find out there's some other poor motherfucker that was doing the exact same thing, but he wasn't quite as good looking or he didn't have quite as good management or something like that. What you're talking
about there, right?
Right, what?
You know exactly who you're talking about. Fucking Jerry Lee Lewis. In some ways might have been better than Elvis. But he didn't quite have the look, and he was bad. I mean, in his day, he was a bad dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he was screwing his cousin.
I mean, he married her, but she was 13.
Yeah, he was just, and he
I like his music, but
he said he was the devil.
That's
you know what I mean? He was a wild
pedophile shit going on.
Well, he didn't have the pedophile understanding.
I know,
back
but
then.
it's still not. That's still not acceptable.
Yeah,
even back then.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis was the fucking devil.
Yeah,
of his time.
His music's awesome though.
Yeah,
but
and then
he didn't seem like that nice.
And
of a
another
person.
thing is, along his line, as subversive as he was, would have been Little Richard. And you look at Little Richard. Little Richard was fucking good, man, really good.
Yeah.
And it was obvious that Little Richard was gay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's obvious to us nowadays.
No, it was obvious back then.
I mean, it was obvious back then, but
to people of the time, they knew, but they couldn't really. You couldn't accuse it because they could closet shit and sidestep. There wasn't proof, but evidently everybody knew he was also the devil, from their point of view. But he was good. Little Richard was fucking really good.
Yeah, I like.
He was real good.
Shit,
yeah,
actually.
And he lived for a long time.
I'm into all that.
Is he still alive or he died?
Ooh, I'm pretty sure he died, but yeah. I like him. I mean, I like Elvis too, but I like a lot of that like 50s.
Yeah.
Rockabilly.
It was just another time, but Little Richard had fucking huge balls for his day, because he was out. For his time.
As out as you could be.
As out as you could be for his
Back
time.
then.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
To be out and black.
Yeah.
In that era.
Yeah.
And just be what you were like.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, people just didn't really do that back then.
But it's my understanding.
For good reason.
It's my understanding from experts of that fucking time and that era that they knew back then. It's just that that was as out as you could be. And they were it was a different time. They didn't make direct accusations. Everything was kind of sideways accusations, And Little Richard was a Southern personality, too. So that's another layer that you fold in. But he was a genius.
It's almost kind of like everybody, because I kind of remember this era.
Yeah.
You would see people on TV like Little Richard or Paul Lynde or somebody like that obviously were gay.
Obvious.
I mean,
obvious.
Flaming gay.
Flaming. They were the masters of it. Paul Lynde? Fucking right.
That's what I mean. But back then, it's like nobody, it was almost like...
And Rip Torn?
Yeah. Fuck. So it's almost like impolite to say it out loud. Like everybody knew.
It was. Everybody knew, but it was impolite.
I mean, I don't know how much like middle America, like they were just kind of...
They knew. They knew.
But it's just kind of like... Everybody knew, but it's like no one like talked about it. Like almost like it wasn't, you weren't supposed to talk about it. If they were famous and they were funny, then they could just be like that. I don't know. It was really weird. It's like really weird.
For me as a boy growing up, I'm gonna give the award best in gay was Paul Lynde.
Best in gay.
Best in gay was fucking Paul
He was
Lynde.
such a bitch, and I loved it.
Motherfucker he was intelligent, sharp wit.
I loved Paul Lynde.
Fucking funny as fuck. He dominated the Hollywood squares in that show.
I mean, they gave him the center square all the time for a reason.
Well, you watched Hollywood
he was
Squares
the best. You watched it just for him.
For Paul Lynde.
Because he was the funniest.
Yeah.
He was the funniest.
Exactly.
He just like, man, just like
Yeah.
the shit that he would come up with was just
Yeah.
like so fucking funny. He was just like very,
And you
very.
can see all that on YouTube. It's out there.
Yeah, he's hilarious. Hilarious. Mr. 88 says, yeah, Carl Perkins too. Yep, that too. Many of Elvis's hits were written by and previously recorded by Carl Perkins. Yep, that's right. It's just one of those things. And then Mr. 88 says, Chuck Berry beat them all. That's the thing. It's just kind of like, you know, everybody knows Carl Perkins nowadays. Everybody knows Chuck Berry. But the thing about Elvis is that, yeah, he didn't write most of his own songs. Did he write any of his own songs? I kind of feel like he mostly just did traditional songs, or he did songs that had previously been written by other people. But there was just something about him. He had like the charisma, the looks, blah, blah, blah. Like I said, a lot of it has to do with the way you look, if you're at the right place at the right time. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with like how talented you are necessarily, which is kind of sad. I mean, it does help, obviously, but, you know, it's not everything, unfortunately. Tammy says Jerry Lee Lewis is still alive. Holy shit. Is he really? 86. Little Richard died 2020. Yeah, I thought I remembered hearing that he had died, like, kind of recently. I mean, Karen Lee says, my grandma got hitched at 15 back in the 1930s, so that was how it was. Yeah, people did marry younger, you know, because I guess it's not like women were, like, going to go to college or have a career or anything like that back in those days, so I don't remember what age my grandmother was. She was 18 or 19, but her husband, my grandfather, was 10 years older, and I don't really recall anyone saying that that was unusual. She wasn't super young, but Karen Lee said my grandma got hitched at 15 back in the 1930s. So
30s, that's nothing. 15.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure my grandma,
Yeah.
she was old. I think she was 19 or 20, but my grandfather was 10 years older than her. But like I said, she didn't get married like as a teenager, but you just did that because like I said, it wasn't like women were back in the 20s and 30s. It's not like they were necessarily going to go to college or have a career or anything like that. So it's just kind of like you married as young as possible.
Yeah. Sly, go and fucking stream. Go order that shit. Elvis and Nixon. You'll love it. I got it on Blu-ray. It's one of my favorite movies.
It's good. It's super fun.
Good. Real good
Like,
movie.
I love Michael Shannon in everything.
Yeah.
But
And
him playing Elvis, although
And it's a true story. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean, they do it like funny, but the whole situation was funny.
Yeah.
So I don't think they added too much on
It was a story about Elvis trying to talk his way into the White House and to put himself on equal footing with the president, because the president was the president, but Elvis was a king. Okay, and fucking, it's just fucking
like
hilarious.
I said, I just
It's
love the way he
hilarious,
just
man.
comes in the office
It's
and he's
hilarious.
like putting his feet on his
Yeah.
coffee table and eating his M&Ms.
And he shows up with guns
yeah.
to see the
And
president.
Nixon is just kind of like, oh, well, I suppose so.
Yeah.
Because it
all
doesn't even
true.
occur to Elvis that he's just kind of like, I shouldn't do these things.
Yeah, no.
Which is like what
shows
makes
up
it
to meet the
funny.
president. He's fucking carrying concealed 1911s,
Which is
and all,
amazing.
and
It's
all
like,
his buddies.
why?
Yeah, and all his boys are all carrying guns.
And he
They're
brought
true.
Nixon some guns, too.
Yeah, and he gave Nixon a fucking
like
45.
all like they were
Yeah.
all like pearl handle or whatever
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fuck they were.
Well, no, he knew about Nixon's military service, so he gave him a commemorative model. You got to see it, man. It's fucking, it's good. It's good.
It is very funny.
And then he ate
largely
Nixon's
based,
M&Ms. Ate up all of Nixon's M&Ms.
not gonna lie, I probably do too. Don't leave these fucking M&Ms in front of me. I'm gonna eat every one of these fucking things. Well, if they're plain, probably not. But if they're peanut,
They're peanut, I think.
if they're peanut, then yeah, I'm gonna eat all of them. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just telling you right now. Mr. 88 says, one of my favorite quotes, John Lennon talking about rock and roll. They would have called it Chuck Berry, but that name was already taken. That is a good quote, actually. I don't think I've heard that one before. Let me see. Good movie with Matt Damon, Behind the Candelabra, about Liberace.
Oh,
Michael
yeah.
Douglas plays Liberace. Matt Damon plays his lover. Oh,
I got to see that one.
man, that sounds good. I haven't seen that.
The
Man,
funny thing-
Liberace was on TV all the time when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
Funny thing about Liberace is one of his biggest famous fans was fucking shit.
I think the first time I saw him was on The Muppet
was it
Show.
on the-
Wasn't he on The Muppet Show?
Evil Knievel.
Oh, okay.
Evil Knievel was
That
fucking,
is odd.
Evil Knievel was one of Liberace's biggest fans. I've fucking seen interviews with Evil Knievel saying that he went to Vegas to see Liberace and thought that Liberace was the fucking best performer he had ever seen and was just so brave. You know, he's stunning and brave, I guess is what he said. And that he wanted his show to be like Liberace's show. Now, he was also an Elvis fan.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, he was all about like the glamour.
Glamour. He liked glamour. Fucking he wore Elvis type clothes with his motorcycle outfits. He liked Elvis and he liked Liberace. Which is kind of funny when you think of Evel Knievel, because that motherfucker was like super macho, hitting people with baseball bats and trying to fight. He was fucking crazy. Evel Knievel was fucking crazy.
Well, yeah.
You had to be crazy to do what he was doing. But
it's
he loved Liberace. He thought
it's
Liberace
kind of
was
interesting, though, because I kind of feel like dudes like that,
yeah,
you wouldn't think that they would be into, because, I don't know, like from a modern perspective, I think people would look back at it and be like, oh, well, Evel Knievel, he was all like this macho, like, you know, more of what we would consider like a more conservative or like a jock type of dude.
Redneck.
Like a redneck type of dude.
Aggressive redneck.
But he was real into Liberace. And like, and like, you know,
yeah,
like I said, you the fucking outfits with all the rhinestones and shit like that, which, looking back on it now, it's like, that's pretty gay.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty gay.
Oh, and I have...
And it's funny that they wouldn't have perceived it like that back then, but that's absolutely what it was.
I actually think he did.
Maybe.
I think he did.
Maybe.
No, I think Evel Knievel knew exactly what that was. I think there was a kind of a situation where Knievel was... he was in the very macho extremes of entertainment. You know what I mean? And Liberace was in another extreme of entertainment. It was like the pretty guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was what he didn't have.
Yeah, okay, I can see that.
So it was kind of, he was admiring something that he couldn't be, is I think is what it was.
But that's kind of cool that he wasn't like...
No, he liked that.
He wasn't like secretive about it.
No.
Because I feel like normally... Especially back then, like that type of dude, if they like Liberace, they would keep that shit on the DL.
Yeah, they wouldn't. They would want it. They would like, oh, I don't want anybody to see that I like.
I don't like Liberace. Shut up. You like Liberace. It'd be like that.
Shit. No, he loved it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It would be like that.
But it might have been a release from his responsibility of having to do these fucking deadly stunts that could have killed him too. It's like the other side. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
see, that's healthy. People need to have that.
I could be suspended from the ceiling and flying around, you know, like a butterfly, and playing the piano and having all these women love me, you know what I mean, for playing this piano. Because here's something else a lot of people don't know. Liberace's fans were all women.
Well, yeah.
You know. And Liberace wouldn't let it out that he was gay because he thought that it would turn all his female fans off.
What are you talking about? Like, women would probably be like, okay.
I think they knew back then.
Well,
but
yeah.
I think Liberace didn't know that.
I think back then, like, they didn't understand, like, the appeal. Like, women love gay dudes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't think Liberace knew that.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew that.
I feel like everybody knows that now. But,
You
like,
know it now,
maybe
but not back
maybe back then they didn't know that.
I think he misunderstood it as sexual attraction. But that's
not exactly what it is.
No.
It kind of is, but I don't know. It's if you're not a woman, it's kind of like hard to explain. It's not exactly like sexual attraction, but
well, Liberace came out and said he didn't want any of his female fans to know that he was gay because he didn't want to break anybody's hearts.
Oh, that's
But
very
I don't think that's what.
him.
But I don't think he had to worry about that because
No.
I think they all knew.
Yeah.
You know.
That's why they liked him, probably.
Yeah.
That's probably why
But
they liked him.
in the ideology of the day, he didn't know that. People were unsophisticated in those days. Even gay people were kind of unsophisticated.
Everyone was unsophisticated.
Yeah, they didn't know how straight women thought. You know, straight women were identifying with him and thought that he was great. You know, so. But he didn't see it that way. He thought it was heterosexual attraction.
It's not though. It's not really the same. It's kind of like, I think the reason that a lot of, and I'm not saying all women obviously because I would never speak for everybody. I'm just me. But I'm just saying that a lot of women like gay porn or gay identified performers or something like that. Not necessarily because it's a sexual attraction. It kind of is, but it's not exactly that. It's more like it's a man, but they're more identifiable to you. Like, they seem more compassionate. They seem to have more qualities that are more attractive to you than maybe a heterosexual man would have. Maybe. Like, I kind of feel like that's where I'm coming at it from.
I think that's what it was back then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's probably not true for everybody, but I'm just saying, like, for me, that's kind of like where it comes from. It's like, oh, it's a dude, but without all the worst qualities of a dude. You know?
Liberace's, listen to this, Liberace's main fans at the time that we're talking about were middle-aged women. Mm-hmm. Okay. A lot of them divorced. And they, and that's who fucking.
And they're kind of like, that motherfucker that I divorced.
Yeah.
Here's a guy, and it's a man, but he's still kind of. He's singing,
like one of us.
He's singing to me.
Yeah.
And he seems like a nice man. He's singing about love, and he's singing, ladies love that shit.
And it's
not all ladies.
It's funny that a macho motherfucker, like, if go back, okay, they did a lot of fucking shows on Evel Knievel before he died, on the History Channel and stuff. There's like 2 or 3 fucking documentaries on him. Evil was he was an asshole. I mean, I appreciate his asshole.
He was kind of an asshole.
He was an asshole.
Yeah, he was kind of.
But he was all man. Okay, I mean, and the dude was fucking gambling with his life.
Yeah, I mean, he did do all that shit.
Yeah.
He didn't put out. I mean, he was still a douche, but it's like, he did do all that shit.
Yeah, he did do all that shit. He was a modern day gladiator. He was fucking doing these motorcycle stunts with no fucking body armor and busting himself up. He broke every fucking bone in his body. All right.
For our entertainment.
And he's doing it on a Harley Davidson, on a Harley Sportster, which is a motorcycle that is not designed to be in the air, and it doesn't have a good suspension, and fucking it is a common street bike. That's all it is. And he's doing these amazing jumps on and wiping out. And getting himself fucking put in the hospital for fucking months, all right? There wasn't any trick, it wasn't that David Blaine bullshit to that, even though I like David Blaine. David Blaine's a fucking good performer. But I meant, who is that motherfucker who was constantly doing the stunts, but he was in this, it's obviously fake. What was that fucker's name?
I don't know who you're talking about.
Oh, man. Back in the fucking late 90s. Anyway, it was real stunts. It wasn't fucking trick photography, and he was getting busted up pretty bad. Sly probably remembers him. Fucking when I was a kid, we had Evel Knievel toys. We were waiting for the next fucking stunt that he would do.
Yeah, my brother had.
We were getting built up to the Snake Canyon jump. I was about 5 or 6 or 7. Waiting for the Snake Canyon jump, and we were talking shit about, oh yeah, he's gonna make it. No, he didn't make it. All right, but it was just something of its time. You know what I mean? It was another time. It was the internet of its day, because it was live action. You were waiting for that shit to be played on ABC.
Zach says you should Google the interiors of Liberace's homes. His taste in design was horrifying. It was.
Yeah,
I mean, it was super tacky. But in a way, it's like so tacky that it's almost kind of awesome.
Well, it was the disco era.
Yeah.
And those.
I don't know. I kind of like some of the stuff about it. I'm not gonna lie.
They had money and they did a lot of LSD. So
Zach said, also, I keep trying to get my roommate to come to the gay bar I go to so he can meet a woman. LOL. Camp guy said,
all the good women are at the gay bars.
Well, yeah, because you don't get hit on.
Yeah.
It's much nicer. It's much nicer.
Jenny used to go to fucking.
It's much nicer being able to just go to a place and drink and dance without like fucking dudes like breathing down your cleavage and stuff every 5 minutes. It's nice.
One of the best goth events that me and Jenny used to go to was at a fucking gay bar. Place gay as shit. Fucking Southern Nights.
It's still there.
In Florida. It's still there. You would love it there. You would love it, Zach.
Southern Nights is a nice place.
Southern Nights is a nice place. It has a theater in it. It has like 7 or 8 bars. Yeah.
It looks like nothing. Like when you drive past it, it's just like in this nowhere part of town. Like, it's across the street from, like, a strip mall that has, like, some insurance offices and shit.
Just Google Southern Nights, Orlando.
It just looks like a dump. But when you go in...
It's fucking beautiful.
It's really beautiful in there, and it's, like, really big.
Yeah, it's all this fucking tiki-style stuff.
Patio
it's like
and
something
everything.
from the jungle, and you're just waiting. The only thing missing are, like, jacuzzis and shit.
I mean, we haven't been there in a while.
We haven't been in a while.
So I hope it's still there.
But they had... fucking goth nights there. They've had
it was a fetish night.
Fetish nights. The porn stars would show up there. Fucking, they had all kinds of shit. Good bartenders. You'd love Southern Nights.
Camp Guy said, "What if I watched gay porn and got a boner? That's why I'm afraid to watch it." Don't be afraid. Let your freak flag fly.
That's fucking, who said that shit?
It's Camp Guy.
Yeah, Camp Guy, you gay as shit.
That's okay. It doesn't mean it's all on the spectrum. Don't worry about it. Karen Lee said, "Yes, Jenny, you got it." When I was talking about why women like gay men.
I guess so, yeah.
Mr. 88 said, "I'm male, but I assumed women felt comfortable around gay men because there were no sexual undertones or baggage. They could just be a person without dodging being hit on."
No,
yeah,
women want to get fucked by gay dudes. They want to get fucked by gay dudes.
No, it's not that.
I think they do.
It's not that. Well, you're a man. How would you know?
I've just watched that shit happen.
How would you know?
I've watched that shit happen in the
I'm just saying that that might be part of it. Because like I said, that's why a lot of women will go to gay bars, because they just want to like go dance and drink without being hit on by creeps. Like, you know, you do have some of that. There is. Oh, he's gonna tell me how women think.
I'm gonna shut this shit down.
This is how you
because fucking one of my best club buddies, fucking Toby, is a fucking leather daddy. All right, and me and Toby we'll be running it all fucking night. All right, and Toby, once he gets drunk, he turns lesbian and he starts fucking with the women. All right, and he'll get all up on Jenny, and Jenny will start fucking making out with him and stuff. And I gotta step in and go, "Well, hold on, Toby, hold on. It's just going too far." And then he'll try to suck me into the shit. Okay?
Well, yeah.
He'll try to suck me
into. But I've known
into
Toby a long time. It's not just like some fucking rando.
Yeah. But no, women like gay dudes. And fucking Toby's a fucking good looking dude. All right, he's about my age.
Well, and to be honest, if you didn't,
he's a leather daddy.
If you didn't know him.
Yeah, you wouldn't know he was gay.
You wouldn't assume that he was gay.
No.
He doesn't look gay.
No, you're very much.
It's like people don't look gay, but you know what I mean? He doesn't look like what you would, is not stereotypically gay.
You gotta watch it though, man. Fucking Toby will fucking try to grab a motherfucker, and the next thing he's always trying to be superior. You know what I'm talking about? And, you know, I'll be like, whoa, you fucking stop that shit. And he's like, well, hey. He wants to do that. And then he'll try to get on Jenny. But we've known him for fucking, almost 20 years.
I mean, it's been, it's been a long time. Maybe more like 15 years.
Yeah, Zach, you would love fucking Toby. But Toby would think you were too much of a bitch boy. He's like, you're not masculine.
I mean, he's older than we are.
By a couple years. He's older than me by a couple years.
He's in his 50s.
Yeah. He's in the medical profession. He's a head nurse.
Yeah.
He's a head nurse, yeah. So you're not talking about a dummy. He got money, too. Trying to get that bitch to go on fucking HRT. My other fucking friend, the bouncer at the club, is like, this bitch got to be on HRT. Because he shows up in these fucking leather daddy kind of revealing outfits. He's losing weight. He's getting skinny. He needs to fucking puff up. And he's like, yeah, no, I need to go on.
I don't know. He looks good the way he is.
He looks good, but I know how he wants to look. You know what I mean? He tells me. I know how he wants to look. But, no, I think it's funny, you know. And one of the reasons why, you know, me and him fell in is I didn't know he was gay. He was just a dude, you know. Like, we were hanging out.
Honestly, that did not occur to me when I first met him either.
I didn't give a shit.
Which is funny. Well, because, you're in the goth scene.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like, I see dudes dressed like that. I don't I don't jump to gay. I just, jump to, oh, he's a goth dude. It doesn't, jump. Yeah. His sexuality doesn't occur to me.
Right.
So when he said he was gay later on, I was like, oh, okay. It hadn't occurred to me.
And he likes macho dudes and fucking he's got respect for fucking guys. You know, he likes real men. And he tells me it's kind of hard because I like real men, but if I have sex with them, then they're not real men anymore from my point of view. I like straight guys. That's what he likes. All right. So you got to fucking watch it with him. Even though he does have boyfriends, it's just that
Yeah, he had one for a while.
Yeah, he never thinks his
Who I
boyfriend's...
liked, actually.
Yeah, he was a good dude. And fucking, but he never thinks dudes measure up. I understand
He's very picky.
the conundrum that he's in.
He's very picky.
I understand the conundrum. As soon as he has sex with a dude, all of a sudden they're not a real dude to him because he likes straight guys. So so it kind of...
He's in...
And I'm like, man...
He's in a pickle.
He's in a pickle.
A little bit.
Yeah. So... But I just told him, I says, this is how it is, and this is how you got to roll, because this is the hand you were dealt.
I mean, you just gotta like fucking take people as they are.
Like,
you
yeah.
can't.
And I said, well, I even tried to fucking flip him straight. I said, you got all these women that fucking love you. Why don't you just fucking go out with one of these girls?
Because he's not into.
And he's like,
he's not into.
They're not really. There's not really.
He's not really. Into
he wasn't
ladies.
really into it.
He's not into.
He wasn't into it. And I says, but
he's just not.
Because that says,
He's
look, you
not.
got that one right there that's calling you. And then you got that one right there. Says, why don't you just get? And he's like, it's just not the same.
Yeah, he's just
And
really
I'm
not.
just like, all right.
He's just really not.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's why. Like I
Yeah.
said, one, I've known him forever.
Yeah.
Two, he's a really good dancer.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, you'll just be over there drinking or
Yeah.
talking to somebody about guns or something like that, and it's like, I want to dance and you're not
Yeah,
dancing.
I know,
So if he's dancing, I'm like, well, I'm going to go dance with Toby then.
That's right.
Because he's a good dancer.
Well, you know.
So, you know, he
I'm
does
not-
his thing. I don't take it seriously.
Yeah. I'm not.
And he kind of like,
if you enjoy
well,
it,
and he's always like,
No, I trust
he does
him.
like this whole like goddess thing, and I'm just like, okay, I like this.
No,
This is nice.
I trust
But you know
him.
what I mean?
I trust Toby just like I trust him, like I trust the girlfriends. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean.
Yeah, you know.
I wouldn't like.
It's
I
just,
love Toby.
It's
He's
just like
awesome.
one of our girlfriends.
He's
It's the same.
awesome.
Let me go to the restroom. Hold on one second.
Even though, but yeah, it's like that.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, well, he's here and he's a good dancer, so he's a really good dancer. But like I said, I think that's why a lot of women like him, because I'm sure this will shock no one, but it's like a lot of straight dudes are really not that good a dancer. You're not a good dancer, and that is something. If you're kind of in the club scene, then that's something that people are going to notice. That's something that I notice if I'm standing there and like I see some dude in like fucking cargo shorts and flip flops or Crocs or whatever, and you're out there dancing, and I'm using bunny rabbit ears as Eddie Izzard says. I question. I was like, how good can this dude be at other things if that is how he dances? Because man, that's really not good. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know what it is. It's like a lot of dudes are just really not good dancers. Like, I don't know. Kind of like normie white dudes generally are really not good dancers. You don't really see it. Some goths are good dancers. Now, some goth dudes are not good dancers. Now, some goth women aren't good dancers either. But a lot of goth dudes, I kind of feel like at least they try. At least they go for it. Like, they're like, I can't dance, but I'm at least, like, you know, I'm waving my arms. Or they're doing something. They're, you know, it's not good, probably, but, you know, they're at least putting themselves out there. White dudes will just kind of go out there and just kind of, like, shuffle around. You know what I mean? And then they're just kind of, like, in the way of people that are actually trying to dance, and you're just kind of like, should I just, like, put my elbow in your kidney, or what? You're just kind of, like, standing here, just going from foot to foot, and it's just kind of, like... I don't know. But yeah. So I think the fact that Toby is kind of like widely loved is one of the things. Is one, he's a good looking dude and he dresses cool, but also he's a really good dancer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it takes something to kind of like put yourself out there and dance like in a way that is not just. Because I was saying earlier, like, while you were in the bathroom, like, a lot of, like, normie white dudes will just sit out there and, like, just shuffle around from foot to foot.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, they're not even committing to anything.
No, they're not even dancing.
I mean, shit. There used to be a guy that used to go to the castle who... He was basically looked like he was doing, like, fucking karate moves.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Which, yeah, you remember that guy?
Yeah.
Which looked kind of ridiculous, but I'm like, hey, at least he's got a style,
Yeah.
and at least he's, like, putting himself out there. He's not just standing there going, doo-doo-doo.
Yeah.
I'm just walking. At least he's not doing that.
I'm going to show Toby. Let me find
At least
it.
he's, like, making a statement.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I can respect that. So I think that's what it is.
I'm going to show Toby. Once I find it.
Strawdog78. My top 3 requirements for the ideal woman. have always been good with money, can cook, and can hula dance. There is a lot to be said for people that can dance. I'm just saying. It's more important than you realize. If you've got rhythm, then that's kind of a big thing. Karen Lee says, I need a guy roommate, cook, fix my hair, and makeup and clean. Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Linwood Sly is asking you,
Yeah.
I have a small gut. What would I need to do besides sit-ups to make it disappear?
Well, I don't know how old you are. I think you're, what, close to 60, right?
Yeah, he said he graduated from high school in
You
77.
need to go on
earlier.
HRT, hormone replacement therapy, start bumping testosterone, and also other things like HCG. You can research that on your own. Do that, and then once you have your hormonal situation taken care of, doing things like sit-ups will fucking rapidly get rid of that, which I'm in that phase right now. I was doing upper body and chest for a long time. Now I'm doing fucking what do you call it? Midriff. Oh shit, this is not a good picture. I was trying to get a picture because there's some. All right, can you see that? They
No,
can't
it's
see
white.
that shit.
Bundy Data says John Travolta can dance. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
What was I saying? I was saying
John Travolta wasn't bad looking when he was younger. Too bad he's a Scientologist. That
Yeah.
kind of like makes him significantly less foxy. But, you know, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He can dance, though. I'll give him that. He can kind of sing, too. So, I'm a big fan of Grease. What can I say? Oh, uh-oh. We got sex bots.
sex bots. Showing.
Attack of the sex bots.
Yeah.
Somebody, do we even have any moderators in here? You might have to get rid of them.
Yeah,
Tom.
moderators might have to jump in there. I think we might have some moderators in there.
Zach is, I think, the only moderator in
Yeah,
here.
Zach, get rid of that shit.
Tammy. Zach and Tammy are moderators. I can't do shit from this one. Yeah, I think they're the only moderators in here. So we're just going to be... Oh boy, Naked HD Fun, best adult dating site. Oh boy,
Yeah.
I'm going to hop right over to that.
Because we've been online for too long.
They start like invading. Well, it's not just that, because every time I upload a video and like post a video, like almost inevitably like the first comment is a sex bot. Like a thing like that. I have to go in and like get rid of it. Do you want to go in and get rid of it? Or?
I'm gonna show
you're
you guys
doing
a fucking cute picture of Jenny.
that. Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
I thought you were looking for.
Yeah, I was looking for it. Remember when we took those pictures of you?
Yeah, Tony
Yes, I was
took
like,
it.
yeah.
Our friend Tony took that picture. I remember. We went over to his apartment and we took like a whole bunch of pictures. Took one and he had one with a guitar and he had all kinds of stuff going on. All kind of going on.
I'm looking for. I found one picture of him, but it was like washed out.
I don't know what to tell you. I can't see it.
Washed out ass fucking pictures.
Washed out ass fucking pictures.
Yeah.
There's lots of good pictures of my phone.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go back to that one.
Mr. 88 said the first song on Mr. Bungle's first album was titled Travolta. He threatened to sue if they didn't pull the name. So they renamed it quote unquote. Those Scientologists, man, they will sue the pants right off you. Tammy said, just got back in with the puppy and here's sex bots. Yeah, we have
sex bots showing up. Go ahead and get rid of the sex bots for us.
How's the puppy? The puppy got bit by a bee. Speaking of which, well, not puppies or bees, but you know what I mean, little fur babies. Where is Pookie? She came in at the beginning of the show and like rubbed against my leg, like, "Hey, mama," and then she like took off. I don't know where she went.
Yeah, that is actually, I guess, the only picture we have. Let me see. Okay.
Yeah.
That's Toby there with the fucking X on his chest. That's me and Jenny on the other side. Let me see if I can get.
It's not bad.
That's Toby.
Yeah. He looks very tall on that.
Yeah.
He's up on a step.
Yeah, I think he was standing on something.
Yeah, that was
So
me
I was
when
like, he's tall, but he's not that tall.
that was me when I had hair there on the other side. And that's me and Jen, and that's Aurora and her ex-husband.
And Jacob.
And Jacob. Jacob went back to Colombia. They got divorced. He was a Colombian guy. He's famous in Colombia for doing a bunch of fucking vampire type stuff. He'd be on television and everything.
Karen said, I don't look at my pics when I was 19 as I'm 63 and age is not kind. It indeed is not. Tammy's, I asked about the puppy. He's okay playing with his toys right now. Okay, well, that's good. I was kind of worried when you said that he got, like, stung by a bee.
How long have we been streaming?
3 hours and 34 minutes.
Okay, it's probably about time to shut it down then.
Yeah. Because Zach just said, I love how this has inadvertently turned into a sidetrack show.
It has.
Well, yeah, it did. Well,
has.
because, you know, we covered the topic, and so Tom was like, oh, goody, now I can, like, talk about random shit.
Yeah, we're talking about random shit. Okay, so my advice was watch Elvis versus Nixon. What else was the other movie that we recommended? I guess that was about it. And we're going to see the new Elvis movie, and we're going to see Top Gun.
Among other things, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see something tomorrow. Sound good?
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and keep in mind, too, the sidetrack show this week
Yeah.
is going to be on Saturday night instead of Friday night. Because Friday night,
Yeah.
we are going to Will's Pub
Yeah, I guess
to
Gene Loves
see
Jezebel.
Gene Loves Jezebel and Rose
Yeah.
Garden Funeral Party.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be home
Right.
Friday night. So we're going to do the sidetrack show
And
Saturday night instead.
Thank you for the super chats. We haven't had super chats in fucking weeks. We
Yeah.
probably made $30, but hey, that's how it is. Fucking, I know what the hell's going on. I mean, the whole economy is like fucking, nobody knows what's going to happen. All right. So this is an escapist style show. Do what you can to cover your own ass. People are saying food shortages might happen. Nobody knows. Do what you can to take care of yourself. And thank you for your fucking money. Because
Yeah,
we're going to try
man.
to take care of ourselves too.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, so we will see you guys for the sidetrack show on Saturday night. Remember, it's going to be Saturday night, not Friday.
Yeah.
And thank you, everybody, for dropping by and hanging out with us this evening.
Yeah.
So we will see you guys on Saturday. Good night.